Chapter 41. The Great Blood Origin Spell was one of the 3,000 great spells that Wang Ling had mastered. Its proficiency level was medium. One of the branch abilities was called Blood Origin Tracing, which could accurately trace the origin of one's bloodline. To put it bluntly, it was a DNA test. In the spirit energy era, many people had in fact relied mostly on bloodline inheritance to pass down their legacies. The Great Blood Origin spell had been all the rage at that time, and cultivators had fearlessly ventured deep into the ancient tombs of older cultivators in search of their legacies, hoping to obtain a huge boost in realm strength in a short period of time. But now, the state had already strictly prohibited this kind of legacies inheritance. This was because the risk of inheritance was very high, and there was also the possibility of contracting a blood disease. Back then, Huaxiao Nation's first-generation leaders had specially gathered these cultivators who had recklessly inherited their legacies together and held a condemnation meeting. The crime was called anti-chainism and opportunism. The leaders of the older generation had always felt that no matter how talented one was, one had to rely on oneself to accumulate cultivation step by step. Relying on crooked methods to cultivate definitely wasn't the right way. So after that, the Great Blood Origin spell had declined, and was strictly banned by the state as a forbidden spell. Apart from Wang Ling, who had learned it in his mother's womb, there were only a handful of people in the world who still knew this spell. Now, Wang Ling would occasionally use this spell to check on the talent of the people around him. Bloodlines were also a manifestation of talent. When he was a child, Wang Ling had always felt that there were people around him who were born with a golden spoon in their mouths. Unfortunately, to this day, Wang Ling hadn't found anyone of his kind. He had discovered the results of Dopey's blood origin tracing test when he entered school. Dopey wasn't an ordinary parrot, even though it had hidden itself very well. Wang Ling had still discovered it. To be exact, it was a hybrid parrot of many noble bloodlines. Through the blood origin tracing, Wang Ling had seen the following species in Dopey's bloodline: Kuenpeng, Ghost Car, Chongming, Vermilion Bird, Baifang. Oh, that was right, there was also a Bobo. Who knew what Dopey's parents had experienced before it was born? Of course, Wang Ling didn't want to know, but the one thing he was sure of was that after mixing so many bloodlines, Dopey had also obtained a unique special ability. Normally, Hero Guo wouldn't show off Dopey's ability in public, otherwise he would inevitably be suspected of performing acrobatics. But now that he had been questioned by Super Chin, Hero Guo felt that he needed to show his hand. He winked at two balls. The man and the bird had actually made an agreement a long time ago. Internally, there was a clear distinction between public and private affairs. Under the watchful eyes of the public, he still had to give face to the host. When he got home, as a shit-shoveling officer, Hero Guo had no choice but to let go of this master of dopey robe and pay the price of his public glory. Others might not know about this déjà vu between man and bird. But Wang Ling had already seen through it. It was just that he didn't want to say too much. It was worth mentioning that Dopey was female. Sorry to keep you waiting. Old Antique skipped cheerfully over to them. Before he could say a few words, his wristwatch rang again. He looked at the caller ID and immediately waved to everyone with a red face. I'm sorry, everyone wait for me. After that, he ran to the side to answer the phone. Such a lively Old Antique was beyond everyone's understanding. While Old Antique was on the phone, Wang Ling could figure out what on earth had happened to him. There's nothing in this world that I don't know. As he spoke, Hero Guo carefully plucked a feather from Dopey's body. The moment it was plucked, Dopey's white and slightly plump body visibly shuddered. What are you trying to do? Feather Lin asked, puzzled. This is a writing testing technique and needs 2 eggs feather as support. As long as this master pinched the bird feather, stared at the fortune teller, and said the fortune teller's name 3 times. We'll know the result based on the color of the feathers, Hero Guo said mysteriously. Dopey silently rolled his eyes at Hero Guo. First you spit on my feather, and now you want me to cooperate with you in showing off. Hee, when we get back, you'll suffer. In fact, how was this a writing test technique? Hero Guo made it sound like it was a marvelous technique. In general terms, it was fortune telling. The main point was that this ability wasn't Hirogua's, but Dopey's own special ability. In Wang Ling's opinion, this ability, which was a combination of the bloodlines of several divine birds, was a little useless, but overall, the result of the calculation should be accurate. At the very least, it was much better than the charlatans who caught people on the side of the road and said, "Benefactor, there's evil in between your eyebrows, you're bound to suffer a bloody calamity." Pinching the feather, Hirogwa silently said Old Antique's real name 3 times. Very quickly, everyone saw the originally white and flawless feather instantly turn pink. Pink feather? Hirogwa stared at the feather with an astonished expression. Lotus Sun gave the pink feather a cursory look and asked, "Pink feather, what does it symbolize?" Hirogwa had long since memorized the symbolic meaning of the color of a feather, but to be honest, he hadn't expected a feather of this color to appear on Old Antique. Thinking of Old Antique's jumping and cheering attitude earlier, as well as this crucial pink feather, the answer seemed to have already surfaced. The answer seemed to have floated out of the water. Pink feathers symbolize luck in love affairs. Old Antique, he's in love. Everyone was enlightened at first. Oh, so he's in love. After a moment of dead silence, there was an earth-shattering roar. What the hell? Dating? Love? Love? This 10,000-year-old Old Antique who only knew how to eat spicy strips had actually started to arrange flowers in his antique vase? Super Chin, Lotus Sun and Feather Lin all felt that this was inconceivable. Is your feather reliable? Super Chin questioned again. F***K. You still don't believe me? I just think it's a little too fantastical. It doesn't make sense to think about fortune-telling with bird feathers, said Super Chin. Wang Ling. So, do you think it's very scientific that bird feathers can change color? Super Chin was someone who didn't believe in superstitions, and was very fond of getting into a dead end, especially when it came to feudal superstitions. To verify the authenticity of the feather's fortune-telling, Super Chin unceremoniously pulled another feather from Dopey's body. This time, Dopey's balls twitched violently in pain. Gnashing its teeth, it looked at Hirogwa. Although, it didn't have any teeth to gnash its teeth with. Dopey didn't care who had pulled the feather. In any case, it would be Hirogwa's fault in the end. Hirogwa, what do you want? Come on, our comrade Dopey Master. Find someone else to calculate it. Super Chin handed the feather to Hirogwa. Hirogwa silently pursed his lips, then looked at Feather Lin. After silently saying her name 3 times, the feather turned dark red. After all, it was her own fortune and misfortune that was being calculated, so Feather Lin was a little nervous. What does this color represent? Hirogwa carefully identified the color of the feather, and quickly read the message. This red feather symbolizes drawing fire to your body. You have to worry about fire in the near future. Stay away from places with fires for the time being. Feather Lin had an incredulous look on her face. This is too accurate. Just last week, the gay doujinshi that she had painstakingly collected for many years was discovered by her father and burned to ashes. Super Chin didn't believe it, and plucked another feather from Dopey's body. Come on, calculate mine. This feather was on Dopey's belly, where the flesh was the most tender, and it hurt so much that all its feathers stood on end. Wang Ling even saw a crystalline tear in the corner of Dopey's eye, helplessly helping Super Chin calculate it again. Hirogwa found that the feather had turned azure blue. He sighed and said, "You have to stay away from water for the next month." Super Chin also had an incredulous look on his face. As expected, it's very accurate. Last week, Super Chin remembered that he had been swimming in the swimming pool when his foot had cramped. If it hadn't been for the lifeguard who had intervened in time and split open the water with a palm, Super Chin felt that it would have been game over for him. Do you believe me now? Hirogwa felt quite helpless. At that moment, Old Antique came back from a long phone conversation, looking even more radiant than before. Students, I have some news for you. Standing in front of everyone, Old Antique didn't hide his wild joy at all. I've found you a teacher's wife. Everyone, Wang Ling. So, what was the point of plucking the feather earlier? Chapter 42. Wang Ling hadn't expected Old Antique to announce the news so soon. There were a lot of flash marriages these days, but he hadn't expected there to be so many flash relationships as well. Wang Ling felt that Old Antique might have been unable to extricate himself from the river of love because he had been lacking love for too long. It was obvious that spring had arrived for Old Antique. On the other side, Hirogwa had also entered the cold winter season. Dopey wasn't an ordinary parrot. This wasn't only reflected in its special abilities after mixing various bloodlines, but also in its ability to transform. Dopey could transform, even though it could only maintain its human form for a limited time. But it was enough to train Hirogwa. Especially when Dopey saw that a small part of its pristine white feathers, which it was so proud of, had actually been plucked off because of this damn fortune-telling. Wang Ling could feel the low pressure coming from Hirogwa's shoulder even from afar. Furthermore, he could hear Dopey's thoughts again: whip, handcuffs, small candle, hiss. Although it was just 3 short nouns, it was already enough for Wang Ling's imagination to run wild. Wang Ling had never thought that playing with a bird could be so exciting nowadays. When in love, Old Antique was even more amiable than usual. This should have been a stress-free spirit sword training session, but Hirogwa's expression was deeply immersed in Dopey's cold pressure the entire time, and he couldn't lift his spirits no matter what. The lesson of this story was that there was a price to pay for posturing. If you wanted to show off in front of others, a bird would drop wax on you behind your back. Wang Ling felt that through this incident, Father and Mother Wang had once again instilled in him a good example of how to be a low-key person. As always, Wang Ling felt that the spirit sword training session this time was very boring. What Old Antique taught was a very basic beginner spirit sword course. In theory, a foundation establishment cultivator could fly a sword. But according to the current education system, Huaxiao Nation's General Administration of Education had moved flying a sword to universities. In high school, the vast majority of foundation establishment high school students would be exposed to basic maintenance of spirit swords and basic flying swords. Of course, as students of the elite class, they might also be exposed to more in-depth content, such as advanced sword techniques and swordsmanship manuals and so on. But for Wang Ling, these lessons still weren't challenging at all. As the saying goes, a true expert doesn't have a sword in his hand, but a sword in his heart. Even a blade of grass can cut through the stars, the sun, and the moon. This kind of highest level of swordsmanship had already been recorded in the annals of history, and most people thought that it was just a legend. But Wang Ling felt that if the Tao Talisman seal was completely undone, it wouldn't be difficult for him to cut a star with a blade of grass. The basic sword manipulation training was mainly to control one's spirit sword to draw the figure 8 in the air. Wang Ling carefully controlled his small wooden sword and restrained his strength as he did his best to hold back, for fear that he would accidentally blow off the roof of the stadium. In the end, thanks to Old Antique's strict grading, Wang Ling's proficiency in the sword control technique was rated 4th out of everyone. Although he was ranked 4th out of the 5, he was still very satisfied with this ranking. The person ranked last was Feather Lin. The mother-child sword was not easy to control in the first place. The mental cultivation method and the imperial sword technique were twice as difficult as holding the sword with one hand. What was more, Feather Lin had misunderstood the gender of her 2 spirit swords over the years, so although they had gone through a long period of getting used to each other, the fact was that the development of their rapport had always been delayed. We can't go on like this. Old Antique put his hands on his hips and sighed, feeling a headache coming on. Although Old Antique, who was madly in love, was a little unusual, he didn't idle around to collect data from the previous spirit sword exchange meet between number 59 high school and number 58 high school. On paper, students from the 3 schools actually had about the same level of control over their spirit swords. In fact, number 60 high school had an advantage because Lotus Sun's mysterious sea had already given birth to a sword spirit. To use an old saying from Chinibu, high school students who had given birth to a sword spirit were as rare as phoenix feathers and Chilan horns in all 100 schools, and were terrifying existences. However, the spirit sword exchange meet was a team event, and used a team grading system. If number 60 high school wanted to win in this exchange meet, apart from Lotus Sun and Super Chin, who were currently performing the best, the other 3 had to at least ensure that their final grades were at or above the average. If one of them held them back, the result would be disastrous. It was worth mentioning that although Wang Ling was ranked 4th, his grades were stuck at the city average. Old Antique felt that this was very miraculous. In some sense, Old Antique felt that someone who scored 60 was more capable than someone who scored 100. But at the moment, it looked like Feather Lin was the only one holding them back, and the grades didn't look good. The city average score for the Imperial Sword technique was 65, and Feather Lin hadn't even reached the passing mark. But Old Antique was Old Antique. Since Headmaster Chen had sent Old Antique to lead the team, even if this fatty who only knew how to eat snacks was currently having a bad time, his teaching ability was unquestionable. After that, except for Feather Lin, everyone else left the gym. There were still 2 hours before dinner. These 2 hours were supposed to be free time. But Feather Lin would have to work overtime to train. "Teacher, am I hopeless?" This Fujoshi was obviously very vexed as she lowered her head deeply. Feather Lin felt that flying a sword had become the second most painful experience in her life, after those Gei Dojinshi had been burned. Girls were thin-skinned, and Old Antique had to leave them some face. If it had been Teacher Pan's teaching style, she would have long since broken out in a torrent of abuse, and used all kinds of radical goading methods to stimulate the students' adrenaline. But every teacher had their own teaching style. This kind of reprimanding and goading method didn't suit Old Antique's gentle style at all. Moreover, this was Old Antique who was madly in love. It was even more impossible for him to reprimand a female student who had been thwarted on the road to learning. Compared with Teacher Pan's goading method, Old Antique was better at encouraging education. Furthermore, he was very good at prescribing the right medicine. Flying a pair of mother and child swords was indeed a lot more troublesome than using a one-handed sword, but the principle was the same. The students just had to memorize a few more formulas. For students in the elite class, memorizing books had never been difficult, not to mention that Feather Lin herself was a top student. Hence, Old Antique felt that it wasn't that Feather Lin couldn't learn, but that she couldn't get into it. Furthermore, Old Antique could see that Feather Lin was in a very low mood. In fact, the pile of collectible Gei Dojinshi that had been burned a while ago was the main culprit behind Feather Lin's mood. But Old Antique didn't know anything about this at all, and could only judge based on his many years of experience and observation. After all, investigating a student's privacy in private was quite perverted behavior. In a situation like this, Old Antique had a lot of ways to deal with this kind of difficult and complicated problem. In any case, he just had to give her what she liked. Spirit light flashed in Old Antique's hand, and a book appeared. He handed Feather Lin a book that he had prepared beforehand. "I hope Student Lin will take a good look at this book. The main character's name is very similar to that of your mother and child swords." Feather Lin took the book curiously, and saw the 4 words, "Founder of Devil Path," elegantly written on the cover. Actually, before this group training, Old Antique had already thoughtfully prepared gifts for everyone in accordance with his motivational method as an emergency incentive. For Lotus Sun, he had compiled a list of Wang Ling's favorite snacks. For Super Chin, he had prepared a dumbbell with a gravity system so that he could control its weight at will. For Hirogwa, he had prepared a small notebook that recorded student gossip that only Old Antique knew. Chapter 43. As the wind rustled on campus, there was a storm everywhere. Senior with a total score of 8,823 in 3 years, senior delinquent, senior buffing, senior Fengyan. At some point in time, He Bufeng's titles and legends had started to circulate in the school. Even He Bufeng himself didn't know when on earth he had been called a delinquent. Perhaps it had been 3 years ago, after his passionate first love in high school had ended? He Bufeng couldn't remember it at all, and didn't care. Since he was already regarded as a school bully and delinquent, He Bufeng felt that sometimes breaking a jar was also a way of freeing himself. Ever since he became a delinquent, He Bufeng discovered that he could enter any restroom in the school as he pleased. Only after he was done peeing would the other students dare to use the restroom with trepidation. The cafeteria auntie always scooped the most meat for his meals. Everyone in the school was afraid of him. Even the teachers. Even Director Xia, who always had a straight face, retreated far away when she saw him. To be honest, he Buffing had hated this kind of life where everyone avoided him like a snake or scorpion. But gradually, he Buffing began to learn how to enjoy it. What he Buffing hadn't expected was that Tang Jingza would come looking for him this morning. This man, who had previously caused the teachers and students from number 58 high school to lose their wits, had actually humbly come looking for him, and begged him to teach those excessive guys a lesson. These 4 people? In the men's washroom, he Buffing threw away the cigarette butt in his hand and stomped it hard under his foot. At the same time, he stared at the photos and relevant information that Tang Jingza had given him. That's them. Tang Jingza replied weakly. Fang Huaqing and Liang Wei shrank behind Tang Jingza, not even daring to breathe loudly. This delinquent senior was indeed as scary as the rumors said. I remember that there were 5 student representatives from number 60 high school this time. You crossed out that Lotus Sun? What, are you looking down on me? You think I can't handle her? He Buffing looked at the information in his hand and smiled. It was a simple question, but Tang Jingza shuddered. Hee, don't be afraid. He Buffing patted Tang Jingza on the shoulder. After all, she's the young miss of Huagua Water Curtain Group, not just anyone can provoke her. What senior said makes sense, however, my time is limited. I can only help you teach one person a lesson at most. He Buffing pointed at the photo. First of all, I don't have the habit of bullying women. This Feather Lin can go first. Senior sure has a good demeanor. Liang Wei flattered. Then, he Buffing pointed at Super Chin. Secondly, this muscular brother looks very hard to deal with. I didn't want to have a philosophical wrestling match with him while I was teaching him a lesson. According to the information, this person's family seems to have some background. I think we should dispense with it. Then, he Buffing pointed at Master of Dopey in the photo. And this one, he looks very silly. But his family runs a spirit pet shop, and I feel that the parrot in his hand is not easy to deal with. Finally, he Buffing turned his gaze to Wang Ling. From the data, this guy seems to be the easiest to bully, right? That's him. Senior, are you sure you don't want to reconsider? After leaving the gym, it was up to Wang Ling to allocate the rest of his free time. Old Antique had made Feather Lin stay in the gym to read Founder of Devil Path. Lotus Sun had taken advantage of the fact that the students at number 59 high school were still in class to run to the school rooftop and try to summon the sword spirit to improve their rapport. Super Chen and Hero Gua, these 2 unmotivated fellows, had scampered back to the school dormitory to play games as soon as they came out of the training camp. Wang Ling didn't need to train, and he didn't play games often. Because any equipment in his hands could easily be scrapped. Of course, the wristwatch which Wang Ming had specially developed for him actually contained games. Furthermore, the game library was updated every Monday, and included almost all the latest games on the market. But Wang Ling had never played a single game before, because the various numerical values generated during the game could indirectly reflect his reaction, agility, and so on. Wang Ling didn't want that data freak to get hold of any clues about him. Wang Ling had always felt that he was actually a very boring person, and that he had always been a loner since he was a child. Of course, this had to do with father and mother Wang's education. There were many times when Wang Ling thought that if he didn't have this realm and strength, he would just be the most ordinary person in the end. The heavens gave everyone a chance, and also gave everyone equality. The price he had to pay for this unparalleled realm and strength was also very painful. Wang Ling couldn't enjoy games happily, he couldn't make friends who were especially close to him, he couldn't high-five his buddies when he was happy, and he had to tremble with fear even when he sneezed or slept. He had to control his strength at all times, and do his best to guard against accidental injuries. This wasn't just a responsibility to himself, but also to others. Wang Ling's deepest childhood shadow had probably been loneliness when he was young, but as he gradually grew older, he had gradually gotten used to being alone. Life seemed to have become a lot livelier after coming to number 60 high school, especially the activities outside the school these past few days, which made Wang Ling feel very uncomfortable and unaccustomed to living in a group, which he had never experienced before. For Wang Ling, This free time was really a rare opportunity for him to have some peace and quiet on his own. How did that song go again? Take a walk with me on the streets of the school, so dirty, whether it was number 59 high school or number 58 high school, which was passed down by word of mouth, there was a place similar to number 60 high school's small garden. After number 59 high school had been expanded by that pretentious school director, in addition to the wide tree-lined path in front of the school gate and the new school building, a piece of land had also been expanded behind the school building. It was a cherry blossom forest full of cherry trees. It was the cherry blossom season now, and the forest was dyed pink by the cherry blossoms. Being in the middle of it gave off the feeling of first love. After school at number 59 high school, you could always see some young couples making vows of love under the cherry blossom trees. Chapter 44. Wang Ling reached out to pick up a petal, closed his eyes, and breathed carefully, savoring the fragrance of the pale pink petals. The fragrance of this season was just right for Wang Ling. These were just ordinary cherry trees. Compared with the various spirit fruit trees sold on the market, which were grown from spirit tree seeds, cherry trees themselves didn't have any spirit chi. But they were still an indispensable part of the construction of the school environment. This was the kind of life he wanted to live. Wang Ling very much enjoyed this rare tranquility. Standing silently in the cherry blossom forest, he savored the pure fragrance and closed his eyes, as if he was the only person left in the entire universe. Suddenly, Wang Ling's body trembled again, and he actually shivered. Of course, it wasn't because he was cold from the wind, but because his muscles were spasming for some reason. His body didn't feel cold, and he was immune to all poisons. Any virus that entered his body would be disintegrated by powerful spirit energy molecules. Thus, Wang Ling had never been sick since he was a child, and didn't even know what a cold felt like. Of course, he would occasionally have a muscle spasm, which often happened when Wang Ling was feeling tranquil. It had nothing to do with his body, but was related to his nerves. Even though he stood at the pinnacle of human cultivators in terms of realm, not everyone could understand how lonely it was to be at the top. The immortal king wasn't an old man who prayed in a run-down temple all day long, nor was he a Taoist priest who had seen through the world of mortals. When all was said and done, Wang Ling was just a 16-year-old teenager, and he also had emotions. Although he said that he was already used to it, in his heart, he was unwilling to admit that he was in fact too lonely. Wang Ling stepped on the soft cherry blossom petals as he slowly walked forward. The cool wind brushed his cheeks, and he heard some subtle sounds in the air. Following the sounds, he looked in the direction in front of him. Not far away, several kittens were playing happily under a cherry blossom tree, jumping and pouncing on the falling petals. These were ordinary stray cats, which could be found on every campus. Sometimes, Wang Ling was quite envious of these little things. They were carefree and didn't need to worry. When they were hungry, there would always be a school poop scooper who would come forward to give them food. When they were full, they could play in groups, and when they were tired, they could continue to lie down and sleep lazily. They didn't need to worry about restraining their strength. Staring at these cute little guys, he really wanted to reach out and pick one up, but considering that the effect of the talisman seal was weakening, he finally withdrew his hand. Under the cherry blossom tree, a beautiful boy was happily playing with a few cats. This was supposed to be a beautiful scene where humans and nature coexisted in harmony. But sometimes, this kind of harmony would be broken, especially when a person knew the mind-reading ability. As he looked at the kittens, he could clearly hear their thoughts. The big cat in the lead said, "Look, this person has been staring at us." Two cats said, "He might be a pervert." Try cat said, "Let's go. He seemed to be trying to grab us just now." For cat, "I heard that there was a pervert who specialized in catching cats to make skewers out of. It's very dangerous here." Big cat, "It's exactly 2:00. Boss Zheng Tan has a meeting to attend. Let's go, let's go." Wang Ling, then. The few cats scattered in one direction. Wang Ling had experienced this kind of embarrassment many times since he was a child, especially when the talisman seal was weakened. His aura was a lot heavier than before, and animals and insects were usually much more sensitive to this kind of dangerous aura than humans. However, not all creatures were afraid of Wang Ling. Occasionally, a few reckless dragonflies and butterflies would perch on his shoulders and hair. Wang Ling continued in the direction in which the kittens had fled. Number 59 High School's cherry blossom garden had a small artificial lotus pond, which couldn't be considered very large. When Wang Ling had entered number 59 High School before, he had heard someone talk about it through his mind-reading ability. This small lotus pond had also been newly built, but there had been a small incident a while ago when a sparrow had accidentally fallen into the water and drowned. A student who liked to cause trouble had named the sparrow Xia Yuha, and then had paid for a stone tablet to be erected on the side, and named the small lotus pond Xiaoming Lakeside. Wang Ling was a little worried that something might happen to the kittens, so he decided to follow them to take a look. These little guys were still too young. Although the water in the lotus pond didn't even reach Wang Ling's knees, it was already deep enough for them. But it turned out that Wang Ling had been overthinking things. This group of kittens clearly had their own secret base. When Wang Ling arrived at Xiaoming Lakeside, it was very quiet, and there wasn't even the shadow of a cat in sight. Wang Ling sighed and was about to leave when he suddenly heard a meow from the cherry blossom tree next to him, and then saw a black shadow fall into the lotus pond. Plop! A huge splash of water. Wang Ling was pretty close to the lotus pond. Under normal circumstances, if he didn't react in time, he would definitely be drenched. But before these splashing water droplets could get close to Wang Ling, they were all frozen in midair. Then, he moved his fingers, and like a receding tide, the water that had splashed up returned to the lotus pond without a single drop left behind. After doing all this, Wang Ling secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Because he had lost control of his spirit energy these days, he had damaged a lot of things at number 59 High School, from a spirit gathering array to a small electronic product. Actually, Wang Ling still felt very guilty. In any case, the water in the lotus pond was public property of the school, and Wang Ling felt that he had saved the day in time. This wasn't time backtracking, but the great gravitational spell, one of the 3,000 magical powers. The sucking palm, that had once become famous in the year of the Shao clan's leader's debut, had been partially based on the principle of this magical power. Of course, he could achieve the same effect by using time backtracking, but it would also consume a lot of Wang Ling's spirit energy. The most important thing was that after time backtracking, the world line would jump, so unless it was absolutely necessary, Wang Ling didn't want to use this ability lightly. Standing next to the small lotus pond, Wang Ling's eyes searched for the black shadow that had fallen into the pond just now. Although it had only happened for a split second, Wang Ling was still able to rely on his terrifying dynamic vision to determine that this thing was probably a black cat. It was obvious that this black cat had been a little startled. After all, it had deliberately jumped in from here and wanted to splash this person with water. After jumping into the water, the black cat had immediately scuttled to the side, hid by the lotus pond, and started to observe in secret. Then, it had seen the entire process of Wang Ling using the great gravitational spell. I never thought that this person would actually know such an advanced spell. He had formulated a series of plans to mess with Wang Ling, but had never thought that he would fail at the first round. What a bad start. He Buffon, who had turned into a black cat, sighed in his heart. He jumped onto a lotus leaf in the lotus pond from one side. After all, it was an artificial lotus pond. Everything from the lotus flowers to the lotus leaves were fake. Moreover, the buoyancy was very strong. It was like a kickboard used for swimming training, so he Buffon could step on the lotus leaf steadily. This wasn't the first time he Buffon had turned into a cat, so he was quite agile. After all, the way he moved was different from his 2 feet to his 4 limbs. It was really hard to get used to it without some practice. And so, this black cat officially entered Wang Ling's line of sight. After a brief confrontation between man and cat, he Buffon jumped off the lotus leaf. With a 360-degree Thomas full spin, he plunged into the water. Then, he started to struggle with all his might. Even if Wang Ling didn't use the mind-reading ability, he knew that this guy had done it on purpose. What was more, Wang Ling now knew very clearly that this black cat was actually a human, and had been sent by Tang Jingzi to mess with him. Given the current situation, if he tried to save Wang Ling, there would definitely be some other crafty plot. If he ignored it, Wang Ling felt that the other party would definitely accuse him of not saving someone in danger. Furthermore, it would very likely affect number 60 High's reputation. After all, old Antique had said that every person who came to number 59 high school represented number 60 high school. Of course he had to save him, however, it was necessary to give him a bit of punishment. Chapter 45. Ever since Wang Ling had personally witnessed old Antique's art mode with his own eyes, he had also started to sort out his own passive skills. Because sometimes, especially for Wang Ling, trouble wasn't just caused by his inability to suppress his strength. Sometimes, his own passive skills were the root of the problem. Thus, over the last 2 days, Wang Ling had actually quietly divided his passive skills into 3 categories: the practical series, the chicken rib series, and the useless series. It could be said that they were simple and clear at a glance. Among the useless series, Wang Ling's deepest impression was a passive branch spell from the 3000 great spells called Great Wave Palm, called Carp Jump. As long as Wang Ling applauded a person 32 times in a row, that person would act like the Carp King when it used Water Splash, and jump around on the spot without any attack. Then, there was the Chicken Rib series. From the name of this series of passive skills, it was obvious that they were tasteless, but a pity to discard. Some skills seemed very practical, but for Wang Ling, they were worthless. For example, Wang Ling's Infinite Devour passive branch spell from the 3000 great spells was the Great Devouring spell. As long as Wang Ling dropped his tears on food, the food would quickly split into many portions in a short period of time. 1 became 2, 2 became 4. Unfortunately, Wang Ling wasn't a foodie. He just had a soft spot for crispy noodle snacks. Wang Ling remembered that when he had used this spell to duplicate crispy noodle snacks as a child, the number of crispy noodle snacks had increased uncontrollably. At that time, Wang Ling could only open up a tunnel and send these spell-enhanced crispy noodle snacks into the vast universe. Now, these crispy noodle snacks could probably already form a galaxy. Thus, although Wang Ling had a lot of passive skills, most of them weren't very practical. As for the practical skill series, although his skill pool was pitifully small, they were all skills that Wang Ling thought would be very useful for hiding his realm. For example, the Great Shielding spell from before. This spell's passive ability blocked the possibility of criminals investigating him through other channels. And now, in the face of this Black Cat movie Emperor flopping around in the pool, Wang Ling's other passive skill had unknowingly been activated. His heavenly eye had the ability to separate the false from the true. To be honest, even Wang Ling hadn't expected that there would actually be someone in a Foundation Establishment high school who knew how to use the transformation spell. This was a fairly advanced spell. Although the general administration of 100 schools didn't forbid the study of transformation techniques, based on the complexity of transformation techniques alone, it was basically nonsense for a Foundation Establishment cultivator to learn them on their own without the guidance of a famous teacher. At this time, Black Cat Movie King had been flopping around in the lotus pond for a full 2 minutes. In the face of such a delicate and pitiful kitten, this person actually had no sympathy at all. This was what he Buffing thought. He had already placed that punk underling of his in the vicinity. If Wang Ling did anything but watch someone die, this underling would immediately take a photo and leave behind evidence of his inaction. The next day, it would flood the school's Chiba and all the major forums. This little bit of news, as long as it was complemented with a slightly sentimental article, it would definitely cause a bunch of shit-shoveling officials to become agitated and form a joint crusade. At that time, number 60 high school would definitely lose all face, but the premise of the entire plan was that the transformation technique must be flawless. The black cat was still flopping around merrily in the lotus pond. Wang Ling stared at the black cat. No one noticed that its deep, obsidian-like pupils were blossoming with a different kind of splendor like a kaleidoscope. It had to be said that He Bufeng's transformation technique was quite superb. To be able to do this, he could definitely escape the detection of most people at the same realm as him. But unfortunately, a mere transformation technique couldn't escape the judgment of the heavenly eye at all. While He Bufeng was happily flopping around in the lotus pond, he was surprised to find that the water around him seemed to have become a lot bigger, and his field of view had changed dramatically. Even the black fur on his hands seemed to have disappeared. Strange. This situation seemed a little off. Then, after a few short seconds, he Buffing stood up in the lotus pond with a stupefied expression on his face. Even his drenched little brother stood up valiantly and energetically. K. He Buffing had never thought that he would turn back into a human. And what terrified he Buffing the most was that even his clothes were gone. Wang Ling covered his eyes, which were stinging from the heat, and at the same time, he cursed in his heart. Who could tell him, why the hell had he Buffing's clothes disappeared? Getting rid of the fake and keeping the real was a little king thorough. It was a little painful to the eyes. There had to be a bug somewhere, right? This was an unexpected awkwardness for Wang Ling. He was a little regretful. The Heavenly Eye's passive skill wasn't something he could control. The ability to get rid of the fake and keep the real was indeed very good, and could help him identify a lot of false illusions. But it was clear that sometimes it wasn't a good thing to restore the real too thoroughly. At that moment, he Buffing felt a little crazy and a little desperate. It was like using a transformation potion in a game, only to find out that all your top-notch equipment had been swallowed by the system. Furthermore, the feeling of his eggs getting cold in the wind gave him a sense of melancholy. He Buffing covered his face and sank back into the lotus pond. He had never felt so ashamed before. There was no one around, and that punk little brother was still lurking in the distance, completely unaware of what was going on in front of him. He Buffing braced himself and said to Wang Ling in a slightly pleading tone, "Classmate, can you help me find some clothes?" Wang Ling, after thinking for a moment, Wang Ling took off his coat and threw it on the side of the lotus pond. Then, he lowered his head and silently turned to leave. After all, he wasn't Super Chin, and there was no way he would be interested in a naked bro. A youngster with a buzz cut who had a slightly melancholy temperament was walking in the cherry blossom forest. He Buffing watched Wang Ling's back as he sat in the cold lotus pond in a daze. He hadn't expected his transformation technique to fail so quickly, and even more so, he hadn't expected that the guy he was supposed to mess with would instead help him out at his most embarrassing moment. Crawling out of the lotus pond with a face full of shame, he Buffing put on the blue coat that Wang Ling had given him. The sports uniform was longer than normal clothes, and it was just enough to cover he Buffing's most embarrassing parts. It was a good thing that school wasn't over yet, otherwise there would be more people in the cherry blossom forest, and he would really be embarrassed. "Boss, it's all recorded." That punk little brother scuttled out from the side. K. What the hell is there to record? Delete it all. He Buffing's face twitched as he recalled how he had seemed to be happily splashing water in the lotus pond when he had just turned into a human. He Buffing felt like a retard. How could he keep this kind of video? Then this person, should we still mess with him? We should raise our hands to welcome such a student from another school with such a righteous view of the world. If it wasn't for this classmate Lei Feng, would have completely lost face. As he Buffing spoke, he took off the punk little brother's pants and put them on. The breeze brushed against his bare thighs and light leg hair, making the punk little brother feel a little aggrieved. I'll have to thank this classmate Lei Feng later. He Buffing sighed. Thinking of Tang Jingza and this bunch of people who craved for the world to be in chaos, he deeply felt the difference in quality between the students of the two schools. He Buffing felt that he couldn't continue to fall like this. Number 59 High School Student Union had to be properly reorganized. The two of them stared in the direction that Wang Ling had disappeared in for a long time. Then, unknowingly, Wang Ling's great shielding spell came into play again. Almost at the same time, both of them realized an important problem. K, wait a minute. This classmate Lei Feng, what the K was his name again? Chapter 46. Wang Ling absolutely wasn't someone who liked to play the role of Lei Feng. He Buffing had brought this upon himself. Wang Ling could ignore it and swagger away. But what father and mother Wang had taught him from a young age was that there should be a bottom line in everything you did, leave a way out for everything, and it would be easier to meet again in the future. Although he Buffing was a delinquent, in the end, he wasn't like that bunch of heinous human-headed dogs from Shadow Stream. Thus, in the end, Wang Ling had decided to keep the school uniform after considering the relationship between the two schools. Everyone knew that the relationship between number 59 High School and number 60 High School wasn't good. But, when will there be an end to revenge? He didn't know what a mere school uniform could change, but he thought it was worth a try. After all, even number 59 High School's most troublesome director Xia had been won over by old Antique. Anything was possible. Over at number 59 High School, someone's balls turned cold as the wind blew past their buttocks. Elsewhere, in the office of the General Administration of 100 Schools, Zhuo was feeling very sad today. In the eyes of outsiders, Zhuo, who had become the deputy director of the General Administration of 100 Schools at such a young age, was undoubtedly an enviable existence. But no one knew that the pressure on Zhuo himself was considerable. On one hand, this pressure came from the leader. The General Administration of 100 Schools controlled all the cultivation schools in Songhai City, including kindergartens. The education bureaus of the major districts had to listen to the direct deployment of the General Administration of 100 Schools. And above the General Administration of 100 Schools was the Alliance of 10,000 Schools. It was under the direct jurisdiction of Secretary Sun Dakong, a leading cadre of the central government. The position of deputy director was neither a big nor a small one. But from Zhuo's point of view, sitting in this position was to receive guests. The director had reaped all the benefits, while he himself could only answer calls in the office. The pressure of a leader directly led to pressure at work, which made Zhuo feel even more bitter. On the other hand, the pressure also came from Zhuo himself. Zhuo was well aware of how he had gotten his position as deputy director. Furthermore, the most terrifying thing was that at the annual meeting every year, a few drunk leaders would drag him along to perform the sky-parting sword move he had used to kill the sky-swallowing toad back then. In short, Zhuo felt very tired sitting in the position of deputy director. Due to the issue of their children's enrollment, many parents came to him to petition. The child's education was a major issue, and there was no way Zhuo wouldn't help. Of course, there were also quite a few parents who sent him red packets in private, but he didn't accept any of them. Zhuo felt that although he couldn't be rated as an honest and clean model worker, at least he could be considered an honest and upright person. He actually wanted to report his leader and throw caution to the wind. However, he did not have any evidence on hand. Especially after the Anti-Corruption Department of Huaxiu Nation's Central Cultivation Bureau had issued 8 regulations and 6 prohibitions, all the leading officials had started to restrain themselves and no longer indulged in debauchery. There wasn't even a single dish at the banquet. The leaders took out abalone-flavored fasting pills from their pockets and put them in their mouths. Then, they began to drink tea and chat. Thus, it was even more impossible for Zhuo to find any evidence. Ever since number 60 High School's crushing defeat of the world-class killer organization Shadow Stream, it had aroused widespread discussion in society. For the Spirit Sword exchange meet between number 59 High School and number 60 High School this time, the leaders of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had personally called Zhuo to express their fervent interest and concern. In fact, the most important thing was Lotus Sun's safety. After the assassination attempt by Shadow Stream, it was said that the big boss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group had directly called the central government. Zhuo didn't know exactly what they had talked about. But after that, the leaders of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had personally called Zhuo to inquire about all of Lotus Sun's activities at school. Just this morning, Zhuo had personally received a call from the higher-ups. Over the phone, Zhuo could guess the content of the conversation. It was most likely about safety. Shadow Stream had lost so many first-class killers this time, and they definitely wouldn't let it go so easily. The Spirit Sword exchange meet between the two schools would be attended by leaders at all levels, and there would be many eyes and eyes. If security measures weren't in place, problems would inevitably arise. In fact, Zhuo had been sending people to keep an eye on them for the last 2 days, for fear that something would go wrong. If this job wasn't in place, the first person to get into trouble would be him, the deputy director who had assigned the task. Receiving guests and taking the blame, it sounded a little sad, but this was in fact the problem Zhuo was facing right now. It wasn't just his job, but also his current situation. That morning, right after the call with the leaders of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools, an unusual guest arrived at Audiobook's office in the afternoon. This person was very tall and wore a black windbreaker that fitted him just right and a motorcycle helmet. At first glance, he didn't look like a big shot. But the moment he pushed open the office door, Audiobook was completely dumbfounded and almost cursed in his heart. Duh. Secretary Dakong? Sun Dakong, Director of Huaxiao Nation's General Education Administration, Secretary of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools, this old leader with an unfathomable realm was a figure whose every step he took in Jingzhou City. Audiobook hadn't had any direct contact with this legendary old leader, and had only seen him from afar at previous annual meetings. To be honest, Audiobook had a very deep impression of Secretary Dakong, so he had recognized the visitor at one glance. It was said that Secretary Sun Dakong was a very low-key person in private, and seeing him today, it really was as the rumors said, F***K, a black windbreaker and a helmet. If one didn't know better, they would think it was takeout. Sun Dakong put down his motorcycle helmet and sat down unceremoniously in the guest chair as he sighed faintly. It's been so many years, but this place really hasn't changed at all. His voice was magnetic and even more so had the tone of an old leader, and his words had a special charm to them. There were usually a lot of parents who came to the office to petition, and Audiobook had almost run out of tea leaves. He opened the jars, but didn't find anything good, and was instantly a little embarrassed. Sun Dakong smiled at Audiobook. No need to trouble Deputy Director Zhua, tea will do. I came uninvited today, so it's fine as long as Deputy Director Zhua doesn't blame me. Audiobook hurriedly poured Sun Dakong a cup of herbal tea. What are you saying, Secretary Dakong? If there's a problem, just give me a call. This is a special line for the people, I don't have this right. Sun Dakong chuckled. So, I came in person today. I've already made arrangements for student Lotus Sun's safety. If you're worried, Secretary Dakong. That's not why I came to see you today. Sun Dakong waved his hand. With Deputy Director Zhua taking care of student Lotus Sun's safety, of course we can rest assured. The higher-ups have seen Deputy Director Zhua's achievements in the alliance of 100 schools in Songhai City over the years. A few days ago, if Deputy Director Zhua hadn't personally planned and arranged for the defense of number 60 high school to defeat Shadow Stream, I'm afraid that it would have been the biggest terrorist attack in the history of our Huaxiao Nation's education sector. If it hadn't been for Deputy Director Zhua, it would have been very hard to predict the consequences. Zhua, then why did Secretary Dakong come to see me today? Number 60 high school's Spirit Sword exchange meet is in 2 days. This time, I'll be there as a spectator on behalf of the higher-ups. I suddenly thought of this yesterday, and haven't told anyone before. It shouldn't be too late for me to come here and report to Deputy Director Zhua, right? Of course, it's enough for Deputy Director Zhua to keep this to himself. Give me an identity to participate in the event in the name of the General Administration of 100 schools. If too many people are alarmed, there's no point in mobilizing everyone. Sun Dakong spoke frankly with assurance, his expression extremely gentle. In short, it's just one sentence, keep a low profile. Old leader, what are you talking about? Audiobook wiped at his cold sweat, he could already make the connection. If word of this King got out, all the leaders of number 59 high school and number 60 high school would go crazy. Furthermore, it wouldn't just be the school leaders, it might even directly alarm the leaders at the bureau level and even the municipal level. Sun Dakong, this person's name was really too resounding. Forget about anything else, just the fact that his identity was revealed. People would tremble when they heard it. In the past, this secretary of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had been one of the 10 most meritorious figures in the founding of Huaxiao Nation. He was an old general who had fought bravely on the ancient cultivation battlefield and made great contributions to the creation of the scientific cultivation era. At this thought, Audiobook's expression couldn't help drifting. Such a figure was actually going to participate in a spirit sword exchange meet between two ordinary high schools? Audiobook felt that this was really too inconceivable. Apart from this, there's one more thing. Sun Dakang sipped his tea. I wonder if Deputy Director Zhua still remembers the demon rampage 6 years ago. Chapter 47. Every time Zhua heard about the demon rampage 6 years ago, he couldn't help trembling. Every year at the annual meeting, those drunk leaders would drag him along to perform the sky-parting sword. Zhua's psychological shadow was already higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. So when he heard Sun Dakang bring up the past again, Zhua could almost guess what Secretary Dakang was going to say next. Sure enough, this old leader, who had quite a personality, glanced at Zhua and smiled. I heard that Deputy Director Zhua's sky-parting sword is a unique skill. Why don't you show it off on the day of the Spirit Sword Exchange meet? For a very long time, Zhua was silent and didn't say anything. In the past, when those drunk old leaders had asked him to perform at the annual meetings, it had been very easy for him to find an excuse to refuse. After all, they had been a bunch of delirious drunkards. But now that the person sitting in front of him was making such a request, Zhua really couldn't find a reason to refuse. First, he didn't dare. Second, he really didn't know how to do it. All these years, Zhua had done a lot of research on the sky-parting sword. But until now, he hadn't come up with any results. What, is there a problem? Seeing that Zhua was slow to speak, Sun Dakang smiled faintly. If it's really inconvenient, just pretend I didn't say anything. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. I originally thought that as a senior from your number 60 high school and a role model in the eyes of most young people, it would definitely be a good motivator if I could show off my ability and talent at such a public event. Old leader, don't misunderstand, that's not what I meant. Oh, it's fine as long as it's not like that, Sun Dakang replied swiftly, directly choking off the rest of Zhua's words. Zhua had wanted to ask if he could perform something else, without using the sky-parting sword. Even if it was a boulder on his chest. But Sun Dakang's unquestionable and resolute attitude had already thoroughly dispelled this idea. This time, there was no way he could run away. Zhua sighed inwardly, feeling a genuine pain in the ass. Now, he was in a very difficult situation. It was hard to get off the tiger. If he did this well, Secretary Sun Dakang would be happy, and he might be promoted. He could say goodbye to his position as the deputy director who had been in charge of receiving guests for many years and start a new life. But if he didn't do a good job, he was well aware that he would really have to say goodbye to this position. To be able to sit in this position at such a young age, it's really not easy. As he spoke, Sun Dakang suddenly got up and solemnly patted Zhua on the shoulder, scaring him so much that he almost fell off his chair. I know you may have your concerns. You must think that you're too young and don't want to show off in front of an expert. You want to keep a low profile to avoid attracting attention, right? Let me tell you a story from the ancient cultivation battlefield. Sun Dakang said. Zhua raised his head, and there was more vigor in his eyes. Back then, the last battle before the founding of our country, the Battle of Sherman, most of the youngsters had only heard of legends regarding the ancient cultivation battlefield. This dusty history couldn't even be found in the history textbooks of middle and high schools, and it was only in university that one had a preliminary understanding of it. Zhua wasn't a history major at university, but he had a basic understanding of the Battle of Sherman. That battle was really too famous. As Secretary Dakang recounted the story, his eyes welled up with crystalline tears, as if he was remembering many things. In that battle back then, the 7 demon gods from the gate between worlds bore down on us with overwhelming might. Together with Minister Shi Yuliang of the current Ministry of National Defense, we stood guard outside the stone gate of Daegu Ridge. Eyes wide, Zhua listened quietly, being able to personally hear the person involved narrate the history. This wasn't an opportunity that everyone would have. Those were demon gods. They were so powerful, their godly might soaring to the sky, and they unleashed countless nomological laws. Heaven and earth lost color, and the phenomenon was astonishing. Even the sun was pressed down, and from hundreds of li away, one could see the blazing nomological flames above the stone gate. The leader of the demon gods was quite powerful. His entire body was resplendent with every move he made, and even heaven and earth resonated with him. On his own, Minister Shi Yuliang tried everything he could, but in the end, he was unable to contend with them. But this battle was already the last stop. In the Battle of Sherman, the task given to us by the higher-ups was to hold the pass. Even if we couldn't win, we couldn't back down in the slightest. Audiobook listened very attentively, and his thoughts drifted along with the old secretary's narration. He could already imagine the terrifying scene of the ancient cultivation battlefield, where the flames of war soared to the sky and godly might bore down on them. But now, standing in front of him and telling him this story, the seemingly middle-aged old secretary was already a living fossil. He had walked step by step from that era, witnessed the development of the times and scientific progress, and sat in his current position. This conversation revealed a sense of age. It made Audra feel as if it were a lifetime ago. In the end, we were all exhausted and fell at the pass of the stone gate. Only Department Head Yuliang stood up alone. He ignited his own divine blood, using the supreme being bone within his body as the price to summon the divine artifact Gao Shaoqin. He played a divine song, replenishing everyone's strength. He also raised his own potential to the limit. In the end, he killed 7 gods in a row. He defended the stone gate and laid the foundation for the founding of Huaxiu Nation. But Minister Shi survived in the end, said Audra. The old secretary smiled. That's right. He survived. At that time, even the tombstone had been set up and he was already buried. Who knows, this guy's pet bird Little Red threw a divine grass at his grave to nourish his vitality, but in the end, he crawled out of the grave on his own. Don't you think it's funny? Audra, in this world, the number of people who could call this old minister, this guy, could really be counted on one hand. What do you understand after listening to the story? Sun Dakong asked Audra. The old secretary's story wasn't told for nothing, it was very important to summarize it. After listening to the story, Audra felt a lot of emotion in his heart. The old secretary used this story to tell me that I need perseverance in doing things, and that I mustn't give up until the last moment. I have to learn a lot from Minister Shi Yuliang and pay tribute to his tenacious vitality, right? You're thinking too much. Secretary Sun rolled his eyes. I want to tell you that if you have any talent, hurry up and show it. Don't hide it, don't be like Minister Shi, hiding a big move and only using it at the last moment. In the end, you almost lost yourself. You're not Ultraman. Once, you had a chance to show off in front of you. If you can, show it off. Don't wait until you lose it before it's too late for regrets. Chapter 48. Ever since the Peiyuan district branch of the Pengxi gang had collapsed, Madame Dong had led a group of old men and women to establish the general administration of harmony. From then on, the Peiyuan district's chaos of racketeering and all sorts of acts that caused chaos in public order seemed to disappear without a trace. No one wanted to be blocked by a group of old men and women on their way to work, forcing them to recite the core values of the cultivation doctrine and the 8 honors and 8 shames to the Little Red Book. Just like that, the people who illegally parked on the street disappeared, and even the people who ran the red light disappeared. In just a few short days, the General Administration of Harmony had escorted no less than 1,000 repeat thieves to the local General Administration of Cultivation in Peiyuan District, eating until the bottom of the detention center's granary. All the policemen at the General Administration of Cultivation worked overtime to take notes and leave a criminal record. It was as if the local cultivation police station of Peiyuan District had become a subsidiary department of old Madame Dong of the General Administration of Harmony. The most infuriating thing was that the police couldn't say anything. Because it had to be admitted that ever since the General Administration of Harmony appeared, the quality of Peiyuan District had indeed improved a lot in all aspects. Moreover, this group of old men and women were very shrewd. They did not leave any traces behind. On the surface, they did not seem to be breaking the law. Even if they pulled someone into a corner and beat him up, they would choose a blind spot. In short, Madame Dong was completely famous. When old Madame Dong walked around Peiyuan District now, even the traffic police couldn't help trembling when they saw her and would respectfully address her as Miss Dong. However, Miss Dong herself was rather dissatisfied with the current situation of the general administration of Harmony. That morning, Madame Dong clasped her hands behind her back and strolled leisurely like an old leader who had been behind the scenes for a long time as she arrived at the secret stronghold of the general administration of Harmony. This base was originally an ordinary abandoned factory waiting to be rented and transferred. The rent was very cheap, so Madame Dong and several senior leaders of the general administration of Harmony each took out some of their retirement pay and pooled their money together to buy this factory. In just 2 days, the idle items in the factory had been swept clean, and the inside was divided into several areas. First, the peaceful reporting area. The people of Peiyuan district could spontaneously report uncivilized behavior in society, and the general administration of Harmony would lend a helping hand as long as it touched on the core values of cultivation. Second, the Harmony Entertainment District. This area was specially set aside for the old men and women of the headquarters to dance in the square so as not to disturb the rest of the people nearby. Old Madame Dong had also purchased a soundproof system at her own expense and set 2 regular square dance songs. The main song was Superstars in Troubled Times, and the closing song was Gokuraku Jodo, which had a domineering tone with a hint of joy. Third, a harmonious meeting room. As the name suggested, this conference room was used by Madame Dong to convene high-level leaders for emergency assignments. In addition to these 3 areas, there were 2 small areas left, which were the Harmony Fitness Room and Madame Dong's independent office, as usual. The first thing Madame Dong did when she arrived at the office was to immediately go to the bathroom to get a bucket of water. Then, she took a clean white cloth and began to carefully wipe the stone that was enshrined in front of the desk. From an outsider's point of view, there was nothing strange about this stone, but for everyone in the general administration of Harmony, it had extraordinary significance. Because it was engraved with the 24 incantations, it was the one Wang Ling had left behind back then. While she was wiping, an old man with a red scarf on his arm came to the office door and knocked on it. "Miss Dong, are you busy?" The old man's surname was Zhang, and he was Madame Dong's right-hand man. A red armband was the symbol of a high-level leader in the general administration of Harmony. Madame Dong didn't say anything as she focused on wiping the stone. 5 minutes later, she wrung out the white cloth and threw it into the bucket of water. She straightened the stone on the desk, and then lit 3 incense sticks in the stove in front of the stone. During this process, Grandpa Zhang didn't say anything as he stood upright in front of the door. After silently waiting for Madame Dong to finish, she slowly turned around and looked at the door as she said indifferently, "Come in and talk. Any new developments?" Madame Dong asked as she stared fixedly at the stone on the desk. "No, we haven't received any news from the director yet. Could he have abandoned us?" the old man replied. "That's impossible. Back then, the director left this stone for us. He gave us the confidence and hope in social security. We abide by the core values of cultivation and adhere to the principle of coming from the people to the people. We serve the people wholeheartedly." Saying this, Madame Dong became excited, and there was a look of sudden realization in her deep eyes. "I know. It must be that our Harmony isn't strong enough and hasn't moved the director." "I think so too." Grandpa Zhang nodded in agreement. Madame Dong frowned. "But given our current financial situation, it's not enough to spread the team to other districts. We already don't have enough manpower in Peiyuan district." Grandpa Zhang also sighed. The new old men and women only know how to play fight the landlord and mahjong all day long. This is already a serious violation of the iron community rules of our general administration of Harmony. The newcomers don't know the rules, so just teach them a little. You have to be patient. Is the financial statement out yet? Let me calculate how much money we're still short of. Grandpa Zhang was silent for a moment. The statement will be sent here soon. I don't think Miss Dong needs to worry about funds for the time being. In the morning, an enthusiastic member of the public sent us a bank card. The funds in it are already enough for our initial operations. Madame Dong had a strange expression on her face. Could it be that this was a card from the director? Have you found out where this card came from? It shouldn't have come from the director. We're still investigating its origin. Apart from a bank card, this person also sent a letter stating the purpose of this card, which was to subsidize the general administration of Harmony's expenses. Grandpa Zhang carefully recalled for a moment, then his eyes widened as if he remembered something. Oh, that's right. Auntie Lee from the technical department found a faint watermark on the envelope, which looked like a string of numbers. Perhaps it's a clue that the other party left for us. Madame Dong's eyes turned as she cupped her chin in thought for a moment. This should be a test that the other party left for us. If we don't even have this bit of reverse investigation ability, our general administration of Harmony would be too degrading. We have to find out where this letter came from as soon as possible. Yes, Miss Dong. Grandpa Zhang nodded. Oh, that's right, what's this string of numbers? Madame Dong asked. Chapter 49. On this day, there was a faint, unusual aura in the air at number 59 high school. The wind rustled on campus, and there was a storm everywhere. Senior He Buffing, with a total score of 8,823 in 3 years, was actually in class. The students were silent, and the teachers wept. No one knew what on earth had happened to this delinquent in the last 24 hours. Tang Jingza felt that this was very unusual, and that there was most likely something fishy going on. It was much more shocking than Director Xia Huaichuan's relationship. Although Tang Jingza didn't know exactly what had happened to He Buffing, based on He Bufeng's performance, Tang Jingza could more or less guess that He Buffing had been thoroughly defeated in his showdown with number 60 high school's pretty boy with the crew cut. Otherwise, given He Bufeng's learning attitude, he would never have degenerated to the point of abandoning himself to attend class. Through He Bufeng's incident, Tang Jingza also saw the essence of the situation. This bunch of people from number 60 high school were simply the bane of number 59 high school. They were truly a toxic bunch. Since coming to number 60 high school, there was no need to mention the damage they had done to the school's public facilities. Even Director Xia Huaichuan and number 1 delinquent He Buffing had fallen into their hands one after another. In Tang Jingza's heart, these two people had been godlike figures who were like two high towers, but now, with number 60 high school's arrival, they no longer existed. Tang Jingza completely understood that this was a bunch of people he couldn't afford to provoke. He was just a mere president of the student union. It really wasn't worth risking his life for this bunch of people. Tomorrow was the last day of the student exchange meet between number 59 high school and number 60 high school, and the curtains were about to be drawn on that crucial Spirit Sword exchange meet. Seeing that the Spirit Sword exchange meet was about to begin, the number 60 high school students were a little restless. It was impossible to say that they weren't nervous. After all, this was a matter of honor for both schools. Everyone's level was actually about the same, and it was a competition of concentration, but this kind of thing couldn't be said for sure, and had a lot to do with one's mentality. Everyone usually trained in a relatively closed environment. But tomorrow, under the gazes of thousands of people, they would represent the school to demonstrate their ability to control spirit swords. Even a small mistake might cause the entire situation to collapse. Of course, the Spirit Sword exchange meet wasn't the most terrifying thing. The most frightening thing was that old antique announced another piece of bad news that afternoon. Mother One was here. This news was far more frightening than the fear brought about by the spiritual sword exchange meet. Speaking of which, Mother One was also a senior at No. 60 high school. She had worked diligently in the school's canteen for over 100 years, and even the first-generation teachers of number 60 high school had eaten her communal pot of rice. One of Mother Wan's memorable traits was that her hands wouldn't tremble when she scooped food, especially when she scooped up meat. She was always generous in scooping up a big spoonful of food, eager for the students to eat more. So until now, Mother Wan's era of communal rice was still a memory for many people. Quite a number of number 60 high alumni who had graduated would ask to try Mother Wan's cooking again when they returned to their alma mater to visit. Back then, every dish she made could be considered a classic. However, this was only limited to that time. Around a few years ago, Mother One had suddenly asked Headmaster Chen to bring along 2 disciples to cook for her. Mother One herself had decided to retire behind the scenes to research new dishes. Headmaster Chen had thought that this was a good thing, but no one had ever expected that Mother Wan would embark on a path of no return with dark cuisine. Mother Wan was a violent person, and this violence wasn't only reflected in her research of new recipes, but also in other aspects. Back when Shadow Stream had attacked number 60 high school, Mother Wan had smashed one of the assassins to death with a large soup ladle. Back when Audiobook had graduated, Mother Wan had already completely bid farewell to her era of communal rice. The 2 disciples she had now brought along were pretty average at cooking, and weren't even 1/10 or 2/10 of what she had been at her peak. This was Old Antique, the famous foodie at number 60 high school, who had personally experienced the difference between the former and the latter. Of course, while these 2 disciples weren't very good at cooking, what terrified the teachers and students of number 60 high the most was Mother Wan's love lunchboxes at noon every Friday. Mother Wan's greatest hobby was to seal the dark cuisines she had invented into love lunchboxes, and then happily distribute them to all the teachers and students in the school at noon every Friday. It could be said that the teachers and students were miserable beyond words. Number 60 high school's headmaster had changed 5 terms, and Mother Wan had been there since the first term. She had been in charge of number 60 high school's canteen for hundreds of years. It could be said that she was a founding figure. Even Headmaster Chen and Director Shi were very polite when they met her, and no one dared to complain at all. Of course, Mother Wan had also given Headmaster Chen this lunchbox with the dark cuisine sealed in it. At that time, Headmaster Chen had braced himself to eat the stir-fried chili mooncake in front of Mother Wan's smiling face. After all, it took a lot of time and effort to prepare these lunchboxes. Although the cuisine was very dark, Mother Wan's intentions were very sunny. The path of exploring cuisine was a very difficult one to begin with. Thus, even though the teachers and students of number 60 high school felt bitter in their hearts, they chose to endure it in silence. They could only hope that Mother Wan could come up with new cuisine soon, so that dark cuisine would no longer be dark. The Spirit Sword exchange meet happened to be on Friday, and Mother Wan prepared the love lunchboxes in advance on Thursday as usual. In the end, when she checked the number of people, she realized that there were actually 6 fewer people than usual on Friday. Mother Wan patted her head as she instantly remembered number 59 high school's student exchange meet. Without stopping to rest, she hurriedly made 6 special lunchboxes and flew her donkey brand flying sword on her way to deliver the lunchboxes. And then, there was the current scene: Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, Super Chin, Feather Lin, Hero Gua and Old Antique sat in a row in the quiet school building. In front of each of them was a lunchbox of love which Mother Wan had carefully prepared. The pink lunchbox didn't hide Mother Wan's girlish heart at all. In front of them was a middle-aged woman wearing a snow-white chef's uniform and a light yellow apron. Her curly hair was tied into a small ball under her chef's hat. This was Mother Wan. Hands on her hips, she said in a domineering manner, "Everyone, hurry up and eat while it's hot. These 6 lunchboxes are specially custom-made and will be delivered early. They can replenish your body with all kinds of nutrients, so that you can better prepare for the Spirit Sword exchange meet tomorrow." Wang Ling took a deep breath. His sense of smell was much more sensitive than that of an ordinary person. Even though a dark seal on these lunchboxes had yet to be removed, he could still smell a scent that was even more bizarre than the fruit and vegetable juice that Tang Jingza had given him. If they ate this thing, they might all end up dead tomorrow. "Everyone, let's eat, don't disappoint Mother Wan's good intentions." In the end, Old Antique was Old Antique. Even in this situation, he didn't break his composure, and was very calm. Old Antique braced himself and took the lead to open the lunchboxes. In the end, everyone was shocked. Today's food actually looked pretty normal. "Is this stir-fried shredded potato?" Old Antique asked as he picked up a piece of crystal-clear shredded potato with his chopsticks. Mother Wan shook her head and said, "No, this is heavenly silkworm potato." Lotus Sun pointed to the tomato slices on the side of the potato shredded. "Then what is this dish?" "Oh, this dish." Mother Wan smiled and said, "This dish is called Holy Shit Tomato." Chapter 50. In number 60 high school, music classes were as rare as Old Antique's theory of history classes. The music teacher was Teacher Ding Yu. Come to think of it, he could be considered a veteran in the music circle. He had taught a lot of students and had written a lot of songs, big and small. But apart from that famous Ballad of Shu Xian, he didn't seem to have any other noteworthy works. Teacher Ding worked part-time as a music teacher in a lot of schools, and used the pitiful number of classes given to him to unearth young talents with musical accomplishments. Teacher Ding was very bitter, but couldn't say it out loud. A while ago, Teacher Ding had been invited as a guest on a variety show. Then, a group of people had surrounded him and started to ridicule him one by one. Some people said that Teacher Ding had once been a vein of pop music and had been at the forefront. Now, after so many years, Teacher Ding was still in the pop music ranks, but he was hovering at the back, and refused to fall behind. In order to carry this old man, Huaxiao Nation's pop music couldn't even run. At first glance, this sounded a little sarcastic. Teacher Ding knew that this was just ridicule, and that as a musician, he should have a spirit of entertainment. After hearing this, Teacher Ding still felt a little uncomfortable. But it had to be said that this vicious ridicule also made Teacher Ding re-examine his own musical path. Am I really old? Teacher Ding had never been one to admit that he was old. He felt that he was as young as the children nowadays. But every time he saw Headmaster Chen at school, the latter would respectfully call him Old Ding. This made Teacher Ding feel a heartbreak from the bottom of his heart. A lot of the time, music creation was a matter of theme and creativity. For the Ballad of Shu Xian, from back then, Teacher Ding had fused elements of R&B and opera into the ancient style, which doubled the rhythm of the entire song in the early stages. When the opera in the chorus came out, it instantly made people feel as if they were walking on air. Of all the songs that Teacher Ding had composed over the years, the most famous was Ballad of Shu Xian. Apart from that, there were also some songs that Wang Ling liked very much. For example, Eternal Azura, Past Events of the Great Wilderness, and so on. This was a talent, and also someone whom Wang Ling greatly admired. As a composer, Mr. Ding incorporated his own ideas into every song. He tried hard to pass on his years of musical attainments to all the musicians who were currently working hard. Even in the scientific cultivation era, music was still incomparably important and indispensable to the shaping of the mind and soul. Mr. Ding felt that no form of music would ever decline. There would always be a group of loyal listeners. However, as a musician, he had to work hard and pay with his own blood, tears, and sweat. Music is not a jigsaw puzzle. It is not something that can be pieced together. It is also not something that can be imitated by a parrot or copied. Mr. Ding always liked to popularize his music philosophy to everyone in his class. At the same time, he abhorred plagiarism in the music industry. As an original composer, Mr. Ding felt that he could not grow old. He still had many missions to fulfill. The last class on Friday was Mr. Ding's music class. Professor Ding slowly walked into the classroom. The entire classroom was silent, and no one spoke. The students of Elite Class 1 gave this old artist enough respect. However, Mr. Ding seemed a little different today. He seemed especially happy. Did Mr. Ding have some new inspiration? Lotus Sun asked with a smile. That's right, Mr. Ding didn't deny it. I'll be releasing a new song soon. I hope everyone will like it. As soon as he said this, the whole class instantly burst into an uproar. Wow! Mr. Ding is releasing a new song. What kind of song is it? Where did the teacher get his inspiration from? Everyone remembered that it had been a long time since Mr. Ding had released a new song. The older people got, the more cautious they became. Of course, Mr. Ding was no exception. In Mr. Ding's music dictionary, there was absolutely no such thing as shoddy production. As long as he participated in the creation of a song, he would definitely give it his all. This was probably the moral integrity of the older generation of artists. Hearing the students' questions, Mr. Ding smiled. This is a school-style song, and the source of inspiration was none other than you. It was you who inspired me. Mr. Ding, don't hide it. Why don't you sing it for us? If you want to listen, of course that's fine. But I also have two small requests. Mr. Ding smiled slightly. A few days ago, I gave you guitar homework, and I don't know if you've practiced it seriously. I hope that a classmate can step forward and finish the guitar part. In addition, I hope that a female classmate can sing with me. This is a song for a man and a woman to sing together." Before Mr. Ding could finish speaking, Master of Dopey slapped his thigh. "My God! Mr. Ding, you're developing toward the legend of the Phoenix. Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, Super Chin, Feather Lin and Li Xianjing, classmate Gua, please correct your attitude." After a long silence, Lotus Sun was the first to step forward. "Mr. Ding, let me sing. But the guitar. I'm not very good at it." "Okay. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Then for the guitar part, I'll pick a random boy. A man and a woman working together won't be tiring." Mr. Ding glanced at the roster and finally chose a name from the thousands of students. "Wang Ling, who is classmate Wang Ling? Please come up." Wang Ling hadn't expected Mr. Ding to pick him up. Wang Ling was used to keeping a low profile and didn't like to show off his abilities in front of others. But since Mr. Ding had picked him up, Wang Ling felt that he had no other reason to refuse. This was a teacher whom Wang Ling respected very much, and he felt that he had to give him this much face. On his arm was the new Dao talisman seal which Wang Ming had invented, so for the time being, Wang Ling didn't have to worry about controlling his strength. The first 3 months after the new Dao talisman seal was when the restraining effect was at its strongest. Wang Ling took out a school-issued practice guitar from his pocket and slowly walked up to the stage. "Now, I'll transmit the structure of the song to you." Mr. Ding gave a gentle smile, and a spirit light appeared in his hand which slowly seeped into Wang Ling and Lotus Sun's minds. From lyric writing, composition, arrangement to singing skills, playing skills, after about 5 minutes, the transmission was over. "Do you understand?" Mr. Ding asked. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun nodded. "Then, student Wang Ling, student Lotus Sun and I will present this song, The Helplessness of the Immortal King, to everyone." After Mr. Ding said this, Wang Ling strummed the strings, and then, accompanied by the brisk and refreshing sound of the guitar, the magnetic sound was like a poem floating in the wind, and it had a different kind of charm to it. "Last night, I cultivated till the third watch again troubled by a trifle the helplessness of the immortal king who on earth can see clearly a caddy of Tao talismans for ascension who will listen to the past true wish in fact, world peace, school life is like duckweed floating and floating, gathering and scattering unpredictably chasing dreams all the way remembering the little elf caught as a child remembering the awkward scenes of those years, holding hands looking UPI have seen every year's brocade. Don't look back with rhythm singing, the ballad of a common immortal, strutting forward raising one's head as long as I have you I won't lose control of fate." Everyone was attracted by the song and marveled at the nostalgia in every word, which was full of charm, like old wine hidden in a cellar. From this melodious and cheerful song, they heard a beautiful prelude to youth, they saw the rolling, never-ending wheel of youth, a simple and unadorned old guitar, gently sweeping away a period of green and lush time. It outlined the long dusty memories in their minds, memories that seemed to have passed away, but also seemed to have never passed away. The elites of Grade 1, Class 3 couldn't help feeling a little emotional. This was a song of youth that belonged to everyone. The Daily Life of the Immortal King, theme song, The Helplessness of the Immortal King, list of main writers, / lyrics, Ku Xuanjuan performance, Old People X Feather Sacrifice Little Rabbit producer, Su Zhao composition, Deep YS arrangement, Mill guitar, Wang Ling mix, Mr. Once Happy May Day, everyone. This song took a total of 3 months to compose. Before I even opened the book, I had been planning for it. From the lyrics, composition, arrangement, recording of the instruments, recording of the vocals and harmony of the singer, to the post-production mixing, and the promotion of the music video. Thank you very much to all the friends who worked together on this song. At the same time, I hope that all the brothers and sisters who truly love The Daily Life of the Immortal King and Ku Xianjun will do their best to support Ku Xuanjuan's creation. This song is currently available for download on NetEase Cloud Music. There may be a delay in searching on NetEase Cloud. If you can't find the song by name, you can search for the singer directly, Ku Xianjun, Come listen to the song. On B Station, search for Ku Xianjun. You can also search on the WeChat public platform, Ku Xianjun, with the keyword, Immortal King, to see it. Chapter 51. Whether it was the heavenly silkworm potato strips or the goddamn tomatoes, as always, the names were filled with Mother Wan's domineering and violent nature. But seeing that today's dishes seemed normal, everyone breathed long sighs of relief in their hearts. Old Antique stretched out his chopsticks and picked up a slice of tomato. Mother Wan immediately added 3 spoonfuls of white sugar from the seasoning bag she carried with her, and then smiled at Old Antique. 3 spoonfuls of sugar goes even better with the goddamn tomatoes. Everyone, after eating Mother Wan's bento made with love, everyone saw her off at the school gate and waved goodbye to her in the breeze. Although the love bento still tasted so strange, everyone was still very touched by Mother Wan's intentions. After checking the number of people, they realized that 6 people were missing. This old mother immediately remembered the group of students from number 60 high who had come to the exchange meet between the 2 schools, and had hurried over to deliver the love bento that could only be eaten on Fridays in advance. It was worth mentioning that every time Mother Wan made the bento, she would count the number of people very precisely, no more and no less. Apart from Mother Wan, no one else in number 60 high could do this. This old mother, who had been in charge of number 60 high for 100 years, truly cared about the students and teachers of each batch. Goodbye, students. I'll come back to the Spirit Sword Exchange meet tomorrow if I have the chance. Moi. After that, Mother Wan waved at everyone and left them with these chilling, moi, words. She then stepped on her donkey brand flying sword and flew off in a cloud of dust. There seemed to be a lot of things to do on the eve of the Spirit Sword Exchange meet. As soon as Mother Wan left, Wang Ling's eyelids started to twitch. Disaster level, 2 stars. Wang Ling could more or less guess what was going to happen. The Dao Talisman seal on his arm was about to expire. It wasn't hard for Wang Ling to figure out what was going to happen. It was obvious that that guy was coming. That annoying guy whom Mother Wang had contacted before. Ever since he was a child, Wang Ming had always been a huge headache for Wang Ling. Even though the state classified Wang Ming's true identity as a state secret and didn't stint on lavishing praise on him, comparing his brain to something even more terrifying than a holy weapon, Wang Ling's impression of his cousin was still limited to those 99 stupid challenges. To put it bluntly, this guy was just an idiot. Moreover, this kind of stupidity was also reflected in many aspects. Of all the stupid things Wang Ming did, the one he enjoyed the most was pretending to be a cultivator. It was 4:30 p.m. on Thursday. School ended on time for number 59 high school, and there was a constant stream of students heading to the school gate in 2s and 3s. A man also stood at the school gate on time. He was dressed in coarse hemp clothes, and his thick black hair was neatly trimmed. The man carried a long sword that weighed at least 50 kilograms on his back. He looked like an ascetic who traveled the world all year round. Unfortunately, his attire didn't match his temperament. If someone with a higher realm used their spiritual sense to scan him, they would immediately know that he was a muggle without any spiritual power. The essence, energy, and spirit of a cultivator contained a kind of natural essence energy. This kind of essence energy originated from heaven and earth, was born from the Dantian, and circulated through the meridians of the entire body. Over time, it could change a person's temperament from the inside out, making their eyebrows shine brightly and their footsteps as light as the wind. A true cultivator could even give off a faint fragrance. Standing at the gate of number 59 high school, Wang Ming sighed in his heart. Even though he was young and promising, elegant, and extremely talented in cultivation, having talent didn't mean that he could cultivate. Because of his physique, Wang Ming had realized at a very young age that he had no fate with cultivation. Hence, he had devoted 100 times more energy to scientific research. Watching impatiently as the Foundation Establishment high school students passed by him, Wang Ming couldn't help but look a little envious. If it wasn't for his physique, given his cultivation talent, a mere Wang Ling wouldn't be his match at all. Wang Ming thought regretfully in his heart. Sir, who are you looking for? Number 59 high school's school guard came over and asked a little warily. With the Spirit Sword exchange meet coming up tomorrow, number 59 high school had increased its efforts to investigate suspicious people inside and outside the school. Even parents had to report to the teachers in advance before they could enter the school, and the teachers had to call the school guard office to request permission before they could enter. But this person had been standing at the school gate since 20 minutes ago, sighing as he did so. The school guard thought that this person was a little strange. Looking at the old man, Wang Ming suddenly came back to his senses. "Hello, fellow Daoist, I'm here to look for someone." The old man sensed a trace of an ancient aura from this form of address. He looked Wang Ming up and down carefully again. "You're a parent?" The old man also had a cultivation, although it wasn't a very high realm. However, he could still distinguish a cultivator's essence, qi, and spirit. The term, fellow Daoist, was something that big shots with profound realms addressed each other. The old school guard stared at Wang Ming's face for a long time, but no matter how he looked at him, he couldn't tell that this person was a big shot. On the contrary, the more he looked, the more suspicious he felt. Yes, I'm a parent. I'm here to look for someone." Wang Ming carefully calculated his seniority. When all was said and done, he was also an older brother. He was a whole 6 years older than Wang Ling. It didn't seem wrong to call him a parent. Thus, he nodded. "Which student's parent are you, and which class?" "I'm here to look for number 60 high school's Wang Ling. He's representing the school at the exchange meet." The old man was suddenly enlightened. So it was that group of people, but as a student's parent, the old man was still suspicious of Wang Ming's identity. A parent of a foundation establishment student should at least be at the golden core stage, right? Most of the school teachers were at the golden core stage, and the old guard had come into contact with them a lot, so he could still distinguish this aura. It was very obvious that this person didn't have the slightest bit of spirit energy on him. Thinking about the recent assassination attempt by Shadow Stream at number 60 high school, the old guard's thoughts couldn't help drifting. In the last 2 days, the higher-ups had issued clear orders to be on guard for fear that Shadow Stream would take advantage of the Spirit Sword exchange meet to retaliate. Now, number 59 high school's entrance examination was very strict, and internal security had arranged patrols and experts to keep watch. To be honest, the old guard didn't think that Shadow Stream would have the guts to brazenly sneak into the school. But this young man pretending to be a cultivator had indeed successfully attracted the old man's attention. Chapter 52. However, the old man didn't have any evidence to prove that Wang Ming was pretending to be a cultivator. This was a society ruled by law, and everything required evidence. This old man, who had been in the criminal investigation department for many years, naturally understood this principle. After pondering for a moment, the old man held out his hand to Wang Ming. "Sir, please give me your ID card. If you're a parent, our school authorities will verify your identity." Wang Ming didn't think too much about it, and straightaway fished out his ID card from his pocket. The old man took his ID card, turned to the guard room, and took out a portable card scanner before inserting his ID card into it. For the last 2 days, number 59 high school had been on high alert in order to ensure that the exchange meet between the two schools could proceed smoothly. This portable card scanner was used to check the identities of suspicious people. Generally, the school would only use it during the college entrance examination. As long as the ID card was inserted into the scanner, it could instantly verify whether it was real or fake. This old man, who was experienced in criminal investigation, thought that if this person had really been sent by criminals, it was likely that his ID card wasn't real either. It had to be said that the old man's judgment in criminal investigation was indeed very good. Wang Ming's ID card was indeed fake. But the producer of this fake ID card was none other than Huaxiao Nation's Cultivation Academy of Science. Official forgeries were the most lethal. Wang Ming's identity had always been protected by Huaxiao Nation as a state secret, and no one could find out anything about him. Take this fake ID card, for example. Apart from his age, basically everything else was fake. What birthplace, ID number, and even his portrait had been filtered to make him look good. This could be considered special treatment for Wang Ming, the youngest academician in Huaxiao Nation's history, so, forget a mere old school guard, even if the cultivation police personally came to check his ID card, Wang Ming wouldn't be able to do it. Wang Ming didn't even have to be modest. In the end, just as Wang Ming had expected, his ID card passed the card scanner very smoothly. Like a POS machine, the card scanner printed out a long list, which gave the old-school guard a blank look. Name, Wang Xiao. Gender, male. Age, 22. Place of origin, Fragrant Pavilion and Water Pavilion, Yending Heavenly Palace, Tianba City, Huaxiao Nation. Character experience, Wang Xiao came from a poor family, but he is extremely talented. He is one of the rarest existences in the entire cultivation continent. He has a younger sister called Wang Xiaohua, but unfortunately, she is not his biological daughter. He frequents the auction houses and the underground markets. He has a female confidant, but she was born with energy and cannot take care of herself. At the age of 16, he accidentally gave his first time to the legendary demon Medusa. The above information has been verified by Huaxiao National Cultivation Police Department. The old man cursed in his heart when he saw this nonsensical character experience. This experience is even more incredible than a web novel. What surprised the grandpa the most was that this strange and miraculous experience had actually passed the examination of the cultivation police. There must be some kind of deal going on behind the scenes, right? It was actually Wang Ming himself who had written this unreliable life story. Back then, the president of the Cultivation Academy of Science had repeatedly asked Wang Ming to revise it, but in the end, he couldn't dissuade Wang Ming's persistence. Wang Ming had always regretted the fact that he was unable to cultivate despite his talent, so he was very serious about this kind of detail. He wasn't a cultivator, but he still wanted to pretend to be one. Whatever other cultivators had, he had to have it too. Wang Ming had summed up the life story on the ID card based on the cultivation novels he had read. No matter how inconceivable it looked to outsiders, he was at least very satisfied. As for the long sword that Wang Ming carried on his back, it weighed 100 jin, but it was a real immortal sword. Wang Ming had given this heavy long sword the name Xianzhong. Although he didn't have spirit energy and couldn't use it, Wang Ming still braced himself and carried it wherever he went. So, to sum it up in one sentence, it was that Wang Ming was stubborn and liked to put on airs. This was also why Wang Ling hated Wang Ming a little. Wang Ming's stupidity was reflected in every aspect. This definitely wasn't just a one-sided statement. Relying on his flawless ID card, Wang Ming had entered number 59 high school as he had wished. But he wasn't in a hurry to look for Wang Ling. Instead, he turned into the grove on the side of the tree-lined path, found a secluded corner, and put down the long sword on his back. As soon as the immortal sword touched the ground, the lawn instantly sank into a shallow pit. Damn it, this sword was too heavy. Wang Ming's forehead was covered in sweat. An immortal sword that weighed 100 jin was like a toy in the hands of any Foundation establishment cultivator. But as an ordinary person, Wang Ming felt that his shoulder would be dislocated after carrying this sword for so long without taking a break. I have to deliver the Dao Talisman to Wang Ling as soon as possible. Putting on airs was one thing, but Wang Ming hadn't forgotten his mission this time. Delivering the Dao Talisman was his number one mission. After all, it was currently the only way to suppress Wang Ling's power. He had to deliver it to Wang Ling before the last Dao Talisman was about to expire. Otherwise, all of humanity could face a crisis. While he was thinking this, Wang Ming decided to set off. Just as he was about to lift the black heavy sword, a pretty girl in number 59 high school's uniform walked slowly toward him from a distance. This was a tall girl, and even number 59 high school's ugly uniform couldn't hide her beautiful face. The school jacket was slightly open, and Wang Ming could even vaguely see the other party's sexy collarbone and the plump, F***K. Long, straight black hair. And it was a 36D. Wang Ming was so excited that he sucked in a breath. In a flash, he picked up the 50 jin black heavy sword from the ground and carried it on his back. It was obvious that the frantic secretion of adrenaline had numbed Wang Ming's sensory nerves. Initially, Wang Ming had to crouch down to carry the sword on his back, but now, it was effortless for him to lift it with one hand. "Hello, may I ask, can you do me a favor?" The long-haired girl walked over and lowered her head a little shyly. Her voice was simply too melodious, as crisp as a wind chime, and Wang Ming felt relaxed and happy when he heard it. He had really been cooped up in the research institute for too long, and it had taken him great effort to take 2 days off this time to deliver the Tao talisman to Wang Ling. Who would have thought that his luck with women would be waiting for him here? Looking at the girl, Wang Ming instantly let his imagination run wild. Even the black heavy sword on his back didn't feel heavy anymore. Of course, no problem. How can I help you? As a gentleman, Wang Ming felt that he had no reason to refuse a beautiful woman's request. Chapter 53. When a tall, beautiful young girl delicately stretched out her hand to ask for help, most men wouldn't refuse. At first, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with the girl's words, but anyone who had studied in a cultivation school would definitely be able to pick out a lot of loopholes in her words. First of all, it was impossible for a spirit sword to be stuck in a stone, unless the stone was a divine striking stone. Otherwise, a normal stone wouldn't be able to resist a spirit sword at all. It would be as soft as tofu when cut. Furthermore, the gymnasium in a high school cultivation school wasn't open all day, especially when number 59 high school had been heavily guarded for the past 2 days. Anyone who wanted to use the gymnasium had to submit an application in advance, and it would only be open during the application period. It was closed for the rest of the time. That was because the gymnasium's locker room was a surveillance blind spot, and it was very likely that criminals would take advantage of it. Number 59 high school's school leaders had already done their best to be on guard, and had thought of everything they could think of. But if the opponent wasn't a normal person, there was nothing they could do. Wang Ming had thought that his spring had arrived. Following the girl's gravitational pull, he floated to the gymnasium, but was stunned to find that the main gate was locked. It had already been closed. This scene finally calmed Wang Ming's feverish mind a little, and this strongest brain in Huaxiao Nation started to feel that something wasn't right. At that moment, the girl who had been walking in front also paused, turned around slightly, and gave Wang Ming a mysterious smile. The main gate is locked. Classmate Jiang, why don't you wait until class tomorrow and ask the teacher for it? This smile was really too strange, and Wang Ming's heart trembled when he saw it. He wasn't a fool. As the strongest scientific brain officially recognized by Huaxiao Nation, even if his knowledge of cultivation was limited to those messy cultivation novels, he still had the basic ability to read a person's body language. His intuition told him that there was something very wrong with this girl's smile. Mr. Wang Shower, oh, no, it's more appropriate to call you Mr. Wang Ming, right? The strongest brain officially designated by Huaxiao Nation. The girl narrowed her eyes and maintained her smile, her expression unchanging. We spent a lot of effort to find you. Wang Ming was frightened by these words. His identity had been closely guarded. To the outside world, he was just Wang Shower. That Wang Shao heir who lived in Tianba City's cloud-top heavenly palace's fragrant pavilion. Wang Ming's scalp went numb. Who the hell are you? At that moment, Wang Ming's brain cells started to spin at high speed again. Jiang Luiying, he felt that the name was somewhat familiar. Flowing shadow. Flowing shadow. Flowing shadow. Wang Ming instantly froze. This girl was from Shadow Stream? It seems like our strongest brain has thought of something. The young girl smiled and took off her coat, showing the golden ribbon tied around her arm. Wang Ming was once again absent-minded. Shadow Stream Gold Ribbon Assassin. This was not only an expert assassin, but also an expert among experts. Moreover, a Shadow Stream Gold Ribbon expert signified that this person was also a high-level member of Shadow Stream. Wang Ming remembered that he had once read a confidential report from the Research Institute. Among the top 5 killers on the current international ranking list of killers, Shadow Stream's Gold Ribbon killers occupied the 2nd to 5th places. As for the legendary number 1 assassin with the code name, Teacher Killer. To this day, the International Intelligence Agency was able to accurately grasp the information of the top assassin in the world. At the moment, none of this was important. The most important thing was that Shadow Stream's people had actually started to move again. The spirit sword exchange meet between the two schools was just around the corner. Needless to say, Wang Ming knew that this group of people probably wanted to stir up trouble again. Although Wang Ming didn't think that this group of people would be able to stir up any waves, after all, Wang Ling was there. In an extremely short period of time, Wang Ming quickly sorted out his thoughts and looked at the young girl as he spoke. Your real target isn't me, right? Seeing that the young girl wasn't speaking, Wang Ming continued, your goal is revenge. Am I right? You're trying to kidnap me, Huaxiu's strongest brain, and use me as a hostage to hijack the exchange meet between the two schools tomorrow? Jiang Luiying smiled slightly. Let's just say you're right. But have you ever thought that even if you find out my identity? My identity is a secret to the outside world. In other people's eyes, you've just kidnapped an ordinary person of no value. Wang Ming was sure that the young girl wouldn't hurt him for the time being, so he started to calm down. What if we reveal your true identity? Wang Ming was startled by this answer. What's in it for you? As long as it's not good for you, it's good for our shadow stream. The red ribbon assassins that we painstakingly nurtured were all killed in a rundown school like that. Now that I think about it, it's still inconceivable. At the Spirit Sword Exchange meet tomorrow, the leaders of both schools will be present. In other words, all the experts will be present. Holy shit! You want to catch us all in one fell swoop? Wang Ming was stunned. What's there to be shocked about? Why not? It was just two ordinary high schools. According to the intelligence, the strongest expert who would be present tomorrow was only at the peak of the late Gold Core realm, right? With just this bit of strength, I can crush one with one hand. The young girl revealed her small canine teeth and smiled sinisterly. Wang Ming, first of all, putting aside the question of whether or not they could crush Wang Ling to death. Wang Ming felt that based on the last time Shadow Stream had sent out their red ribbon assassins, it was very clear that Shadow Stream's higher-ups hadn't learned their lesson at all. Speaking of which, they didn't know what kind of enemy they were facing at all, right? This was Wang Ling. Once his power went out of control, even Wang Ming himself would be afraid of him. Miss, I advise you to give up on this idea as soon as possible and go home. Your mom is calling you for dinner. Wang Ming tried his best to persuade her. In this world, there was actually someone even more stupid than him. Wang Ming really couldn't understand why such a cute and beautiful girl would insist on courting death. That won't do. It was clear that the young girl was determined this time. We've been preparing for this revenge operation for a long time. As she spoke, the young girl waved her hand. Spirit light flashed at her fingertips, and a hexagonal crystal instantly appeared in her palm. You should be very familiar with this thing, right? So it was you who stole the Void Stone from the Research Institute. Wang Ming's eyes widened. Wang Ming was very familiar with this thing. This was a magic treasure that was currently being developed. Based on the magic treasure itself, it had been combined with modern space technology, and was a cultivation black technology magic treasure that was still in the testing stage. With the power of this magic treasure, not only could one teleport an unlimited number of times within a range of 200 meters, it could also isolate one's aura in an alternate dimension, making it impossible for people to detect it with their spiritual senses. However, such a treasure that was integrated with modern black technology was brazenly stolen from the Research Institute not long ago. Huaxiu Nation's Academy of Sciences had been urgently investigating this matter, but Wang Ming never expected that the Void Stone would actually fall into Shadow Stream's hands. This group of killers who killed without batting an eye had obtained the power of the Void Stone. It was simply unimaginable. With one hand on Wang Ming's shoulder, the young girl skillfully manipulated the Void Stone with the other. Wang Ming felt his vision blur, and when he came back to his senses, he realized that he had already landed firmly in the gym's locker room. Before the Spirit Sword Exchange meet tomorrow, our strongest brain will have to trouble staying here for the night. May I ask, what time is it? It's almost 6:00. What the hell? It's already 6:00. Wang Ming's eyes widened in astonishment. He hadn't given Wang Ling the new version of the Dao Talisman yet. Wang Ming did a simple calculation. It seemed that there wasn't much time left before the old version of the Dao talisman completely lost its effect. What, your mom wants you to go home for dinner? Seeing Wang Ming's panicked expression, Jiang Luiying couldn't help laughing sweetly. After calming down and thinking for a moment, Wang Ming replied very seriously. Big sister, you might not believe me when I say this. If you don't let me out, the earth might be destroyed. Chapter 54. It took Jiang Luiying about half a minute to digest the information Wang Ming had given her. Then, she pinched Wang Ming's chin and observed him carefully. It wasn't until she confirmed once again that this man wasn't in disguise and was the real Wang Ming that she heaved a long sigh of relief. As Wang Ling's cousin, Wang Ming and Wang Ling actually resembled each other a little. As long as he gave up his old cultivator disguise, Wang Ling felt that this guy could still be considered young and fresh. But the difference between the two was that Wang Ling had never been a narcissist, while Wang Ming would stare at himself in the mirror all day long and be infatuated with himself. In order to prevent Wang Ming from getting distracted during his research, the Research Institute had replaced all the objects that reflected his image. Wang Ming was an idiot, and this idiocy was reflected in every aspect, especially his narcissism. Do you know, in all my years, this is the first time a girl has pinched my chin. Being pinched by a beautiful girl's little hand and stared at for a long time made Wang Ming a little restless. But big sister, now really isn't the time to flirt. I'm giving you 3 minutes to let me out, otherwise the whole world will be finished. When that time comes, forget about your grand revenge, you might not even be able to find your own ashes. Who the F*** K is flirting with you? Jiang Luiying couldn't help swearing, her big 36D breasts jiggling with anger. She didn't speak for a long time, and seriously suspected that she had kidnapped the wrong person. She hadn't kidnapped the strongest brain, but the strongest retard. After thinking for a moment, Jiang Luiying suddenly thought of something. Given Wang Ming's current identity, plus the pressure of work, maybe, there really was something wrong with his brain. People who worked in scientific research tended to have very divergent thinking, and this kind of person was most prone to paranoia. After muttering to herself for a while, Jiang Luiying crouched down and said to Wang Ming, I'm very sorry, my tone just now wasn't very good. There's something I should confirm with you. As a qualified kidnapper, Jiang Luiying felt that it was very necessary to pay attention to a hostage's mental health. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if the hostage went crazy before he could be used. Furthermore, this was a hostage with paranoia, and was very likely to be suicidal. What is it? Wang Ming ducked into a corner of the locker room. You're delusional, aren't you? In other words, there's something wrong with his brain. You're the one with a problem in your head. You don't have to pretend. I already know. Jiang Lu cupped his chin in his hand and looked at Wang Ming calmly. I've studied some basic psychology before. With the degree of paranoia that you have, imagining that the earth will be destroyed every day, this is obviously beyond cure. You should pay attention to it. Didn't the Cultivation Academy of Science do anything about it? You need love. The destruction of Earth is real. If you don't let me out. See, you're acting up again. Jiang Luiying rubbed Wang Ming's head. Don't worry, our shadow stream killers are all very professional. In order to ensure the value of the hostages, no harm was allowed to come to the hostages before they were used. Both physically and mentally. As she spoke, Jiang Luiying gripped Wang Ming's hand tightly. Believe me, I'll cure you. Wang Ming already didn't know what to say. How about this, in order to show my sincerity? I'll give you a love hug first. As soon as the girl said this, Wang Ming felt a pair of hands wrap around his back and forcibly encircle him. Immediately after, he felt 2 incomparably huge shadows pressing down on him like Mount Tai, tightly covering his face. Wang Ming. F***K. These 2 things were really too big. He couldn't breathe at all. The girl hugged Wang Ming for a full 2 minutes before she let go. Then, she was stunned to find that Wang Ming had already fainted, and 2 streams of dark red blood were gushing out of his nose. At that moment, Jiang Luing truly felt the seriousness of the problem. She immediately dialed a number on her wristwatch. "Sister, I've caught the person, but this person seems to have a problem with his brain. My initial assessment is that the other party has a very serious paranoia. I gave him emergency treatment just now, but I didn't expect him to actually have a nosebleed." The voice on the other end of the line was cold and sweet. "How did you treat him?" "Of course it's to give him a hug of love. This kind of serious mental illness needs humanistic care." The woman on the other end of the line clearly sucked in a cold breath. "I understand, sister, what do you understand? It's not that there's a problem with his brain, it's that there's a problem with yours." Wang Ling stood at the entrance of number 59 high school's dormitory and gazed deeply into the distance, his eyelids twitching at a steady pace for more than 5 minutes. The disaster level had directly risen from 2 stars to 3 stars. Looking at the current situation, this disaster warning still didn't look like it was going to stop. Wang Ling could more or less guess what on earth this warning foretold. The old version of the Dao Talisman seal was about to expire. It would be completely removed in an hour at most. But until now, there was still no sign of Wang Ming. Wang Ling closed his eyes and released his spiritual senses in an attempt to track down Wang Ming's aura, but realized that he couldn't find it at all. He had clearly sensed Wang Ming's aura earlier. Furthermore, he knew that Wang Ming had already entered number 59 high school. Wang Ling had assumed that Wang Ming would arrive soon, so he had waited at the entrance of the school dormitory. But the strange thing was that when Wang Ling tried to track down Wang Ming's aura again, he suddenly realized that it had suddenly disappeared. It was as if Wang Ming had evaporated from the face of the earth. Of course, if Wang Ling's power was completely unsealed, he would be able to immediately track down Wang Ming's aura no matter where it was. But by then, it would be too late. This annoying guy, had something really happened to him? Wang Ling stared into the air and frowned a little irritably. It was very obvious that something had happened to Wang Ming. Furthermore, it was very likely that his aura had been masked by some magic treasure. Although he didn't know Wang Ming's exact location, Wang Ling was certain that Wang Ming was definitely still at number 59 high school and hadn't left its perimeter. Since he couldn't use his spiritual senses to track down Wang Ling's aura, there was only one way left for Wang Ling to think of. Wang Ling walked under the shade of a small tree where there was no one around. First, a pair of cat ears appeared on his head, and then his entire body shrank as he turned into a black and white Persian cat. In this critical moment, Wang Ling's first thought was of those little wild cats in number 59 high school's cherry blossom forest. Chapter 55. Whenever Wang Ling ran into any trouble at school, the first thing he thought of was never to ask his classmates or teachers for help. Of course, part of this was Wang Ling's own pride, but more than that, he wasn't used to it. Wang Ling wasn't used to asking other people to do things for him. He was used to being alone, and even if he ran into trouble, he always wanted to solve everything on his own in silence. For Wang Ling, asking for help from his classmates and teachers didn't exist at all. Of course, in an urgent situation like this, there were times when Wang Ling would mobilize a special group of people. These people could be bees flying among thousands of flowers, or they could be little ants everywhere, and then there were the stray cats scattered around the school. In any case, the group that Wang Ling mobilized absolutely couldn't be people. In fact, whether it was bees or ants, they all had their own limitations. Although there were a lot of them, because of their low intelligence, even Wang Ling found it difficult to control them. No matter how melodious your zither was, it was useless to play the lute to a cow. Thus, the stray cats in 2s and 3s on the school were probably the group that Wang Ling was most familiar with so far. In the minds of all stray cats, apart from foraging for food, sleeping, basking in the sun, and playing Dao all day long, there was one more important thing, and that was to find their own organization and grow up healthily under the care and love of the organization's leader. After a long period of wandering, every stray cat recognized the tragic fact that no shit-shoveling officer would take them in. They put down the last bit of pride in their hearts and began to huddle together with other cats who were in the same situation as them. After all, an unorganized stray cat nowadays couldn't even get a piece of dried salted fish. And this was the cruel reality of cat society. Thus, although most stray cats looked disorganized, they were in fact very disciplined. They would go out for a stroll at a set time, and then return to the secret base at the set time. They would never give the criminals who caused trouble at night the slightest chance to hurt them. So to sum up, this group of stray cats without shit-shoveling officers were actually very united. Take the stray cats in Peiyuan district, for example. Each of them had their own team, and there was competition between them as well as alliances. The cat world looked very leisurely and lazy, but in fact, it wasn't as simple as people thought. Cats had their own problems. They would make noise, fight, and claim territories. Of course, they also had their own beliefs. Especially for these thousands of stray cat groups, big and small, the existence they all believed in was immortal meow. There were many legends about immortal meow, but although they sounded exaggerated, there were 4 things that all the cats believed in the legends that were passed down by word of mouth. There were many witnesses to these 4 incidents, and many of the older generation of stray cats could testify as well. One of the legends. Immortal Meow's origins. Many cats could no longer remember when Immortal Meow debuted. All they knew was that Immortal Meow had appeared very suddenly, coming and going without a trace, like a mysterious dragon whose tail was nowhere to be seen. Most of the time, they would suddenly appear behind a cloud of mist. It gave the cats a feeling that they had the demeanor of an immortal. Over time, the name Immortal Meow came to be. The second legend. It was about Immortal Meow's debut. Immortal Meow's debut wasn't simply because of the way it appeared. It was more because of its innate aura and majesty of an elder. Almost all the kittens remembered the major events that had taken place when Immortal Meow had made his debut. The first was that Immortal Meow had single-handedly wiped out all the rats hiding in the sewers of Peiyuan district within a 5,000-kilometer radius. It had established enough living space for the numerous stray cats who were weak and alone. Rats bred much faster than cats, and there were more than 10 rats in one litter, while most of the stray cats were single. Over time, the rats outnumbered the cats. If it hadn't been for Immortal Meow, the cats wouldn't have had enough living space at all, and they wouldn't have been able to establish their own base in the sewers. It could be said that the first thing Immortal Meow did when it debuted was to make a huge contribution to the cats. Back then, the rats of Peiyuan district had either fled or scattered, and some had even been knocked unconscious by Immortal Meow's pressure. Then, the stray cats had picked them up one by one and used them as food reserves. The second thing was that Immortal Meow had popularized the concept of team management to the stray cats. It was precisely because of this that the stray cats now had a home to rely on even if they didn't have a poop-shoveling officer following them. The base they had built in the sewers was their current home. And it was precisely because of the standardized team management system that the stray cats now held their heads high and puffed out their chests, completely ignoring the supercilious looks of the domesticated cats who were being looked after by the poop-shoveling officers. And the third thing was that Immortal Meow had driven away the big dog gang in Peiyuan district, which had taken pleasure in terrorizing the stray cats. At that time, this group of stray dogs, led by a husky, had all been scared witless by Immortal Meow, and didn't even dare let out a fart as they ran. The third legend. Immortal Meow's retirement. After these 3 things had been accomplished, Immortal Meow had gradually disappeared from the sight of all the cats in Peiyuan district. The stray cats had spontaneously organized all kinds of search activities, and some had even crouched in trees 24 hours a day, just to get the slightest clue about Immortal Meow. But unfortunately, their efforts had all been in vain. Immortal Meow had never appeared again. Like Lei Feng, who had helped an old lady cross the road without leaving his name, it had completely disappeared. Of course, despite this, Immortal Meow's position in the hearts of all the stray cats in Peiyuan district was unshakable. This belief had even spread beyond Peiyuan district. It could be said that the cultural beliefs of the stray cats in other districts had now been deeply influenced by the cats in Peiyuan district. Finally, the fourth legend. The image of Immortal Meow. There were many different opinions among the stray cats about Immortal Meow's appearance. Some cats thought that immortal Meow was a mighty and majestic mutated muscled civet, standing at 1.8 meters tall, the same height as a human. Others said that immortal Meow was an alien mechanical cat from the future, with a slightly chubby blue body and a noble red nose. As for the cloud of mist that had suddenly appeared, it was very likely that immortal Meow's steam engine had come into play. Of course, the above legends were all unreliable. As for immortal Meow's image, the older generation of stray cats had long since settled on it. An old cat born with an unusual physique had once seen it with its own eyes from that cloud of mist. Chapter 56. Wang Ling nimbly jumped onto a spirit-gathering tree and narrowed his eyes slightly as he gazed into the distance. A cat's body was very light, and its paws could cushion its fall as much as possible. Otherwise, Wang Ling wouldn't have dared to jump around like this in his human form. But he wasn't used to it. After transforming into a cat, Wang Ling's field of vision had shrunk a lot. Of course, he was more proficient in controlling his body in this transformation state than He Buffing. He Buffing had only used the advanced transformation spell, but Wang Ling had used the Great Transformation spell, one of the 3,000 great spells. The effects of these two spells were the same, but the experience after using them were completely different. The advanced transformation spell often took a long time to practice and get used to anything. The smaller the object, the shorter the duration. The Great Transformation spell, on the other hand, lasted for a long time, and wouldn't be affected by the size of the object it transformed into. Furthermore, it wouldn't cause discomfort to the soul. To put it bluntly, one came from an advanced spell book, while the other came from the 3,000 great spells. That was the difference. Standing on the top of the spirit-gathering tree, Wang Ling spread out his spiritual senses to capture the auras of the cats. He had heard a few cats mention before that the boss of this area was called Jingtan. Apart from cat boss Jingtan, no one else could command the stray cats in this area. The management of stray cats was very strict, and these strict rules stemmed from the team management system that Wang Ling had popularized for them back then. But what surprised Wang Ling was that even after he had withdrawn from the cat world for so long, these cats still strictly abided by the management system. There were always small-scale fights over territory and food resources between the various groups they formed, but at critical moments, the cats were very cohesive and united against a common enemy. Wang Ling usually didn't deliberately pay attention to or care about these situations. That was because he could always learn something from the stray cats on the street corners on his way to school every day through the mind-reading ability. Of course, Wang Ling would never have thought that his unintentional act back then would now turn out to be an important part of saving the world. There was only 1 hour left before the Earth was destroyed. Now, finding Jingtan and then using its power to find Wang Ming had become the key to this entire matter. Perhaps no one could have imagined that. The ones who would save the world would actually be the stray cats that had been abandoned by people in the past. Back then, after popularizing the concept of team management for stray cats in Peiyuan district, and after solving the cats' various problems of living space and food resources, Wang Ling had chosen to retire. He remembered quite a few of the cat bosses in those areas, but most of them had been first-generation leaders. The ones that left the deepest impression on Wang Ling were the 3 cat tyrants known as the Little Tigers. Thunder Tiger Tang Shi, Little Handsome Tiger Song Ci, Obedient Tiger Yuanxiu. These 3 cat tyrants of the past had long since become old cats that sat behind the scenes and gave orders. Based on the scale of their development over the years, Wang Ling felt that these 3 cat tyrants were now each in charge of a cat army. As for Jingtan, it was still very small, but as the boss of the stray cats in number 59 high school, it could be considered a leader of the cat group. As the saying goes, don't treat the village chief as an incompetent cadre. Wang Ling didn't discriminate against the village head, nor would he discriminate against a cat. When he returned to the patch of cherry trees, it was already after school, and there were a few students here and there looking at the flowers. Wang Ling could smell the sour stench of love in the air. Following the scent, he quickly found the cats who had been rolling around under the cherry trees yesterday a few hundred meters away. These cats were all hybrids who had been abandoned at a very young age. After all, Wang Ling wasn't a cat expert, and he couldn't tell what breed they were at first glance from their appearance. But it didn't matter anymore. If he wanted to find Jingtan, he could only use these cats to lead him there. He had never seen Jingtan before, and didn't know what its aura was like, otherwise he could completely detect it and directly teleport there. After thinking for a moment, Wang Ling strolled over and took the initiative to approach them. But just as he approached them, he once again heard their thoughts. The big cat at the front, "Look, there's a girl coming over." 2 cat, "Wow. It's a black and white Persian cat." 3 cats, "Its fur color is so beautiful, it must be a beauty among cats." 4 cats, "Don't tell me it wants to hook up with boss?" Big cat smiled slightly. "Do you even need to ask? Beautiful cats are only fit for the strong." Wang Ling. "Damn. I'm AF*** king man." Wang Ling now felt that choosing to turn into such a beautiful Persian cat back then had really been a big mistake. Seeing Wang Ling walk toward it step by step, Big Cat felt that its fur was a little dirty and a little inelegant from rolling around on the ground just now, so it crouched down, bent over, and started to lick the ground, not even letting go of its own little butt. F***k, this was obviously even more inelegant, okay? Fortunately, Wang Ling wasn't in the mood to argue with these cats. Staring at them, he directly asked telepathically, "Where is Jingtan?" Wang Ling's deep voice rang out in the 4 cats' minds, and they instantly looked embarrassed. F***k. They had actually gotten the wrong gender. This cat turned out to be a male. Big Cat instantly looked disappointed, as if it had been rejected by a female cat. It lowered its head and collapsed to the ground. "Why, it's a male? Do you have to be so king disappointed? Also, that wasn't the point at all. The point was, where was Jingtan?" Wang Ling felt that these cats were a little careless. They had actually completely ignored the fact that he had used telepathy. Big Cat weakly raised a paw and lamented, "What's the point of a cat's life without a beauty to accompany it?" Wang Ling was speechless. But fortunately, he had already made preparations. There was a flash of spirit light on the ground, and the salted fish-flavored crispy noodle snacks that Wang Ling had prepared in advance suddenly appeared. This was all Wang Ling had on him, and he had originally planned to secretly enjoy them in the middle of the night when no one was around. Wow! Limited edition salted fish crispy noodle snacks. The cat's eyes instantly lit up, and Big Cat jumped up from the ground and rudely rubbed Wang Ling's head with its paw. "Ha ha ha ha. Brother, you're very smart. Since you've asked so sincerely, I'll take you to the boss." This was really a cat that changed its attitude faster than one could flip a book. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. It was said that stray cats were all foodies, and this was indeed true. Wang Ling's heart bled as he watched Big Cat put his 3 limited edition crispy noodle snacks into the Chinkuan Space's small belly pocket. At the same time, he had some doubts about the current style of the cat world. He hadn't expected that in just a few years since he had left, these low-level cadres would actually start to openly accept bribes. This matter had to be dealt with strictly and rectified. About 5 minutes later, led by the 4 cats, Wang Ling passed through an inconspicuous little hole in the corner of the Sakura garden. The hole was firmly blocked by 2 thick cherry trees, and it was very difficult to see from a human's point of view. After passing through the hole, Wang Ling realized that it was an alley of residential buildings. On the east side of the alley was a road sign with the words, Dahuang Road. Following Big Cat, Wang Ling came to an old willow tree that was so wide that 5 or 6 people wouldn't be able to wrap their arms around it. This tree had been rooted here for at least several hundred years. It was said that it had been struck by lightning, but it still stood firm here. Chapter 57. Wang Ling easily jumped onto a treetop and looked around the small tree hole for a long time, feeling that the space inside was bottomless. He immediately knew that the space inside this tree hole had been developed using space expansion technology. This also proved that Big Cat Jingtan's IQ definitely wasn't low, otherwise it would never have had the intelligence to think of opening up a space. Big Cat told Wang Ling a little proudly that Jingtan had put in a lot of effort to open up this space back then. Of course, it wasn't Jingtan who had come up with this initial idea, but this old willow tree which had been rooted in this alley for 300 years. According to Big Cat, back then, the spirit chi of heaven and earth had gathered, and the old willow tree had developed spiritual intelligence. In the process of transcending the tribulation, a bolt of lightning had pierced the tree. Unexpectedly, this bolt of heavenly lightning had inadvertently stimulated the old willow tree's vitality. Now, it was the old willow tree's own idea that this secret tree hole could be used by Jingtan. It took 100 years to cultivate a person, and it was always good to have a few friends to keep you company. How often does this spirit tree wake up? Wang Ling looked at Big Cat and asked telepathically. You should call him Mr. Tree. Big Cat corrected him. Mr. Tree sleeps for a very long time, and only wakes up at night. His surname is Zhou. Wang Ling, Zhou, tree, person. Wang Ling jumped into the tree hole with the cats, and it was as if he had entered a space tunnel. After a flash of light and shadow, Wang Ling saw the huge space inside the tree hole. It really was like a secret base in a movie, where all the space had been neatly divided and used. Wang Ling saw 2 or 3 cats in white coats walk by with 2 books on their heads. Big Cat introduced them. This is the research team of Boss Jingtan's team. Then, Wang Ling saw dozens of sparrows wearing small goggles pecking harmoniously at the corn in the corn pond on the side. This is our regiment's flying company. Big Cat then pointed to several cats in front of them wearing black face scarves. These ninja cats are from the Special Operations Company. The cavalry company trains separately at another secret base outside the tree hole. Wang Ling asked telepathically, May I ask what your regiment is called? Big Cat pointed at a small stone tablet at the side of the base. On it, 3 words were written in human characters. Independent Regiment. Wang Ling stared blankly at the stone tablet. While he was still in shock, Big Cat pointed at the stone tablet and said, There's Mr. Tree Man's inscription on the back. Wang Ling looked at it curiously and saw 2 lines of a poem carved on it. Left carving, frowning coldly at Satan, right carving, bow your head and be willing to be a girl. Wang Ling was completely stunned. Looking at the overall layout of the space and the team, it had to be said that Jingtan was a pretty smart cat. There were cavalry companies, secret service companies, and even air units made up of sparrow soldiers. This was inconceivable. The space inside the willow tree was very big, and the space expansion technology inside was the most ordinary. It wasn't very advanced. But this primitive space expansion technology was able to expand the space inside a small tree hole to the size of a human living room. For these cats, this was already more than enough space. Jingtan's office was in the deepest part of the base. Big Cat led Wang Ling to the door of the office and had a few of its kittens wait with him at the door. It looked at Wang Ling and said, Brother, wait a moment, I'll go inform them. Less than 5 minutes later, Jingtan came out of the room with cat paws. With shiny black fur, pointed cat ears, and a decorative copper bell on its tail, it buzzed as it walked, instantly highlighting the imposing manner of this independent regiment commander. Wang Ling was sure that Jingtan was definitely a cat brought up by Thunderbolt Tiger Tang Shi. Only a cat brought up by Tang Shi would have the air of a cat ruffian. It wasn't hard for Wang Ling to tell from the faint smell that Jingtan was enjoying its dinner at this time. Furthermore, it was a spicy seafood-flavored spicy hot pot. Seeing that Wang Ling had turned into a Persian cat, Jingtan's heterochromatic pupils involuntarily contracted. For it to be able to sit in the position of regiment commander, it was clearly much more sensitive to the Persian cats than that lecherous big cat. Because the legendary immortal Meow was also a Persian cat. Whether it was Tang Shi, Song Ci, or Yuan Chu, they had all ordered the cadres in their respective areas to be extremely vigilant and carefully investigate this type of cat. However, immortal Meow had already retired for a very long time. Jingtan usually searched the vicinity a lot, but had always returned empty-handed. Now, it was suddenly told by Big Cat that a Persian cat had come to look for it. This news stunned Jingtan. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? Zheng Tan hadn't even finished chewing the spicy fish ball in its mouth when it hurriedly ran out. It carefully stared at the Persian cat in front of it, and then saw the cat directly sit cross-legged and slowly float in the air. Back then, Immortal Meow had only imparted some simple foundation establishment body tempering techniques to the stray cats when it had given them spiritual intelligence. It hadn't personally taught any of the stray cats any immortal magic. A Persian cat that could use the levitation spell, and when it did so, there was even a little mist in the air. There was no need to say anything more as Zheng Tan knew this Persian cat's identity. Zheng Tan. Big cat, wow. Brother. What a great magic trick. Zheng Tan really wanted to slap this idiot next to it to death. Great your ass. This is F*** King Immortal Meow. You retard. Meow. Immortal Meow? Big cat's tongue was tied in fright. Zheng Tan narrowed its eyes. It didn't need to guess to know that this guy had most likely F*** King stirred up trouble again. Boss, I really didn't know. I only received 3 packets of salted fish-flavored crispy noodle snacks. Big cat stretched out a paw and trembled as it took out the crispy noodle snacks it had hidden in its belly pocket. Zheng Tan slapped Big Cat's head to the side with one paw. This thing that couldn't do anything right but was good at ruining things. Greedy for beauty and delicious food. Damn it. Deduct bonus. Deduct salary. Don't even think about getting your year-end bonus of small dried fish. How could its chief of staff be such a blind idiot? Ah. Shiba. Zheng Tan slapped its face with a paw, so angry that it couldn't speak. Picking up the crispy noodle snacks from the ground, it instantly felt a lot better. Without wasting any more time with Zheng Tan, it stretched out its paw and drew a portrait of Wang Ming on the ground. At the same time, it sent a telepathic message to Zheng Tan to explain its request. Wang Ling hadn't used this space shorthand technique ever since he had won the national art competition as a child. Because it was simply too eye-catching. Zheng Tan nodded and turned its head to look at its chief of staff, only to see that this guy was lying on the ground with a paw over his ear, repenting. Big Biao, you idiot. It's time for you to atone for your sins. Chapter 58. It could be said that Peiyuan District was the birthplace of the stray cat team management system. After years of development, there were now more than 1,000 stray cat teams of all sizes in Peiyuan District alone. The 3 leading Cat World Army commanders, Tang Shi, Song Ci, and Yuan Chu, were each in charge of their respective divisions. One army led 3 divisions, then one division led 3 brigades, then one brigade led 3 regiments. In terms of the scale of its construction, Zheng Tan's independent regiment could absolutely be called an ace regiment. Now that this ace regiment had all heard the order and set out in full force, the scene and scale were truly shocking. The old willow tree in the alley was just one of Zheng Tan's corps headquarters. Surrounding this corps headquarters were more than a dozen secret bases of various sizes on the number 59 high school campus. Furthermore, most of them were in tree holes. Now, they were like a swarm of bees. The number of sparrows alone had already exceeded 1,000. As they flew in the air, they were like locusts attacking, mighty and domineering. Together with the remaining cavalry battalion, infantry battalion, special agent battalion, as well as the regular battalion. Zheng Tan's independent regiment already had more than 10,000 soldiers in all of its categories. It was almost a full division of troops. Facing the night sky, even Wang Ling couldn't help sucking in a cold breath as he watched the independent regiment sparrows swarm the number 59 high school campus in full force, as well as the stray cats appearing in the grass, treetops, and every little corner of the campus. Fortunately, it was already after school. Otherwise it would be hard to avoid attracting attention by mobilizing so many people, and they might end up on the hot news the next day. The uncle patrolling every corner of the campus couldn't help frowning as he noticed that there seemed to be an especially large number of stray cats on campus today. On average, there were 3 to 4 of them lying on the dozen or so small benches on the campus. There were also some kittens that were openly doing indescribable exercises in public, which made the old school guard's face flush with fascination. Considering that it was spring and the mating season for animals, the old man didn't disturb the cat's pistoning exercise. After patrolling the area and finding no suspicious people, he turned off his flashlight and left under the moonlight. The truth was that these cats were extras that Jingtan had invited. They were used to attract the attention of the patrols, and the real troops were well hidden. As soon as the security guard left, the pairs of glowing eyes in the bushes opened. Cats had very good night vision, and their movements were fast, agile, and sensitive. When the hiding cats jumped out of the grass, they didn't even make a sound. The operation was smoother than expected. The commander of this operation was Jingtan, and the chief commander was a black-spotted, short-tailed cat. It was a little bald, and Jingtan had given it the nickname Monk. The monk was the battalion commander of Battalion 1, and was the cat soldier that Jingtan was most satisfied with so far. In the 1st Battalion, the monk's soldiers had a very accurate impression of the monk, which was that he was extremely intelligent. In the past, he had only enlightened the 3 cat tyrants in the Little Tigers. The other stray cats had been able to develop to this point because of the 3 cats, Tang Shi, Song Ci, and Yuan Chu. Of course, he wasn't the first to enlighten a stray cat. Nowadays, there are many cultivators who have their pets awaken spiritual intelligence. Hamsters, centipedes, turtles, rabbits, Pikachu, as long as you can think of it, they have it. It was worth mentioning that monks were born with high intellect. Back when Jingtan had brought the monk along, it had been quite easy and hadn't taken the slightest bit of effort. The monk had learned how to catch mice as soon as it came out of its mother's womb. Now that it had awakened spiritual intelligence, the monk could use its agility and intelligence to easily toy with more than 10 dogs in the palm of its hand. The monk stood firmly on the command platform where the PE teachers usually directed the jumping exercises. A moment later, the cats that had been sent out to search Battalion 1 returned. Any results? The company commanders meowed at the monk for a long time, and the monk's whiskers trembled slightly. Have you searched the classrooms, corridors, and offices on every floor? Then, the results were already very obvious. Only the gym was left. What was a man doing in the gym in the middle of the night? Peeping on a female student training, and in the end being locked in the gym? Bloody hell! How bad was this person's sense of humor? As a cat that had already seen through the world of mortals, the monk already felt powerless to complain. But this was the person Immortal Meow was looking for, so the monk couldn't say anything more. Wang Ling had always felt that the stray cat force had great potential. Although they usually looked lonely and didn't have a shit-shoveling officer to look after them, they were all alone. But as long as they gathered together, they could play a very big role. Back then, uniting these scattered stray cats had just been Wang Ling's idea, and he had inadvertently sown it. Who would have thought that it would now turn out to be of great use? There was less than half an hour left. Wang Ling could sense that the power of the Dao Talisman seal was becoming weaker and weaker. The more Wang Ling didn't dare to make any big movements, the more he was afraid that his aura would pour out uncontrollably like a flood. Fortunately, Jingtan soon received news from its side. A sparrow very quickly relayed the results of the frontline investigation to Jingtan as soon as possible. Jingtan nodded and looked at Wang Ling as it said, "Immortal Meow, we've confirmed the location, it's in the gym." Gym? Given his spiritual senses, it was impossible for him to not be able to penetrate the gym. Wang Ling felt that the magic treasure used by the people who had kidnapped Wang Ming definitely wasn't simple. At the very least, this magic treasure definitely had the same material as his talisman seal, which was why his spiritual senses were in a blind spot. But now that the location had been confirmed, the rest was easy. Wang Ling and Jingtan then arrived at the entrance of the gym, which was tightly shut. A sparrow perched on a skylight above the gym, and finally confirmed Wang Ming's specific location. This guy was in the girls' locker room. Wang Ling and Jingtan circled around to the back of the gym and faced a thick wall. The entire gym was made of black crystal. It was very hard. There was no way it could be broken using normal methods. Of course, if the talisman seal was still in its normal range, Wang Ling would naturally be able to break it effortlessly. But the current situation was special. The talisman seal was about to expire, and Wang Ling was very afraid that if he punched it, the entire gym and everything within a radius of 100 li would be destroyed. After thinking for a while, Wang Ling ultimately didn't make a move, and just looked at Jing Tan. Jing Tan was instantly filled with deep veneration. Of course it didn't doubt Immortal Meow's strength. How could a mere broken door stump Immortal Meow? Jing Tan felt that Immortal Meow was clearly giving it a chance to show off. Immediately, Jing Tan got excited and meowed loudly behind it. 2nd Battalion Commander. 2nd Battalion Commander, where's your F*** King Dolly Cannon? Bring them up here and blast this broken wall open for me. Chapter 59. Huaxiao Nation's Yadali Special Treasures Research Bureau. This was a place that specialized in researching special magic treasures, and was very well known in Huaxiao Nation. The leader was Billy, a military firearms expert from the United States. He was nicknamed King Billy. In the past few years, King Billy had led his team in the research of special magic weapons and had made major breakthroughs in scientific research theory and technical research. It crushed all the special magical equipment research departments. Although the name Yadali Special Treasures Research Bureau had been registered for a long time, it had only become popular in the past 2 years. The special artifact developed by King Billy's team had 3 characteristics, each of which could be summed up in 3 words. It all boils down to Dolly. First of all, the word E represented surprise. Most of the special magical weapons developed by King Billy's team had this distinctive feature. It always made people's eyes light up. Secondly, big. Not only did this mean that it was extremely useful, but it also meant that it could be used a lot. Generally, special magic treasures had a limited number of uses, and could not be used more than 3 times. After 3 times, the special magic treasure's unique magic halo would disappear. As for the special magical weapons developed by King Billy, each of them could be used at least 10 times. Finally, profit. This word also had a double meaning. On the one hand, it represented the convenience of using magical treasures and the simplicity of operation. On the other hand, it was also taken from the name of King Billy. It had a rather profound connotation. Over the years, King Billy's team had introduced quite a number of special magical weapons that were convenient to use. Among these magical weapons, the most popular one was the Yadali Cannon. Yadali Cannon, magic weapon usage count, 10 applicability. This product is suitable for all kinds of situations. It can easily shatter dark iron, dark crystal and other solid materials. Instructions for use. This product uses the sound channel to fire, only effective against buildings. After the first shout of fire, the cannon would automatically aim at the target and confirm the trajectory. After the second shout of fire, the muzzle would automatically heat up and enter the charging mode. After the third shout of fire, the Cloud Dragon missile and the barrel would be launched. When the commander and the 2nd Battalion commander cooperate to fire, the power of the Cloud Dragon missiles will automatically increase by 20% for every additional female in the building. The attack power increases by 10%, with a limit of 100%. Back then, the instructions for using the Yadali cannon had been spread all over the streets and alleys. This passive effect of automatically determining one's identity and the number of females to increase its power was the most magical part of this magic treasure. Some people said that King Billy was the first person to perfectly illustrate the uniqueness of a special magical weapon. That was because the products developed by King Billy's team were all very exotic. But although King Billy's cannon was a hot product, they were not cheap. King Billy was. It was illegal for ordinary cultivator residents and commoners to use such a special magic treasure on the streets. As for Jing Tan's Yadali cannon, it naturally hadn't been bought. Wang Ling read from Jing Tan's memories that it had seized it from number 59 high school's former boss, Mountain Pao, around half a year ago. Shan Pao was a lustful poodle. Because it had the bloodline of a spirit dog, it had a certain level of intelligence. Shan, King Dan. Days Dan Dog Treasure of in Dan Dan God. Shan Yang Dan Dan Wolf. Shan Dan Dan Spirit Dan Kingdom, Dan King Dog, Dan Spirit. The Yidali cannon had been Jingtan's spoils of war when it had destroyed the Mountain Artillery Command Center. But Wang Ling felt that the reason why such a lethal special magic weapon could fall into the hands of a group of intelligent animals was a little complicated. These stray cats respected its immortal meow. When Wang Ling had given them lessons back then, apart from popularizing the concept of team management, he had also given them psychological counseling. These stray cats respected it as immortal meow. When Wang Ling had taught them back then, in addition to popularizing the concept of team management, he had also given them psychological counseling. Wang Ling didn't know how stray cats in other places viewed humans, but at least in Peiyuan district, they had their own lives. They lived in harmony with humans. There were even plenty of righteous men who would escort ladies home in the middle of the night when they were walking alone on the streets, so that they wouldn't be attacked by criminals. Thus, Wang Ling was very confident. These cats he had trained wouldn't do anything to harm humans. However, what if these special magic weapons fell into the hands of intelligent animals who happened to have dark hearts? There was no telling what the consequences would be, when Wang Ling saw a black cat and its subordinates slowly push out a mountain gun the size of a shopping basket from a hidden haystack. Wang Ling felt that the scene was a little wonderful. With this Yidali cannon, it would definitely be easy to blast a hole in this solid black crystal wall. Furthermore, it wouldn't completely destroy the building. Of course, Wang Ling had also considered Jinka before. But Jinka was actually a little similar to him. As a sword spirit, he was still too young and inexperienced, so he didn't know what to do. Wang Ling was afraid that Jinka would cut the stadium in two with one slash. Thus, he could only pin all his hopes on this Yidali cannon, which had been developed by King Billy's team. At this moment, Wang Ling couldn't do anything else, and even had to maintain a certain frequency of breathing, for fear that something would happen to him when the power of the talisman seal weakened. Even a sneeze at this time could kill someone. However, Wang Ling could still use some simple support spells. Number 59 High School's old school guard hadn't left yet, and the sound of the Yidali cannon would inevitably attract his attention, so Wang Ling set up a barrier to isolate the sound. Zheng Tan put on its goggles and stood next to the Yidali cannon with its hands on its slender waist. 2nd Battalion Commander, are you ready? Ready. Regiment Commander. Zheng Tan nodded and pressed its little cat paw on the cannon sensor identification area to confirm the regiment commander's identity. Following Zheng Tan's gaze, the muzzle of the cannon pointed at a certain point in the wall. Fire. 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 3 shots were fired, and they were majestic and magnificent. With a boom, a beam of spirit light shot straight out of the muzzle. In just a split second, a hole as tall as half a person was instantly blasted open in the wall. In the women's locker room, Wang Ming was instantly woken up by this loud explosion. Jiang Luiying stood dumbly on the spot as she watched the scene outside through the hole in the wall, her face pale with shock. On the other end of the wristwatch, a woman's voice rang out. I heard an explosion. What's going on? Jiang Luiying's mouth twitched. Chapter 60. Gazing at this hole, it wasn't just Jiang Luiying and Wang Ming, but also the woman on the other end of the line were silent. It was obvious that words couldn't directly convey the impact and shock of this scene in front of them. What Jiang Luiying saw was a black cat wearing goggles, one hand on its waist and one hand pressing down on the cannon as it stared at Jiang Luiying. There was a dazzling array of cats around and behind this black cat, on the ground, on the trees, and even on the walls hung ninja cats in black. Furthermore, Jiang Luiying realized that the vast majority of these cats could actually stand on 2 feet. What the F***K, if they had a pair of wings, wouldn't they all be F***King surpassers? Happy possession? There were a lot of intelligent pets these days, but all of them were strictly controlled by Huaxiao Nation's quarantine department. Such a large number of intelligent stray cats had gathered here, and they were even holding a frightening Yadali cannon in their hands. In Jiang Luiying's opinion, this scale and momentum was no less than a small demon rampage. The reason why the demon beasts from the gate between worlds were so frightening wasn't just because of their destructive power, but also because of their organization and discipline. Every time the gate between worlds had invaded Earth in the past, the demon beasts on the other end had discussed the invasion plan first. The current situation was far beyond Jiang Luiying's expectations. It was very obvious that this was a premeditated and planned rescue operation, and the target of this rescue operation was actually a bunch of cats. The woman on the other end of the line was baffled. "Are you still asleep?" "Sis, I'm really not lying to you, you might not believe it, but there really was a bunch of cats, oh, no, a division of cats, surrounding me. Especially the black cat leading them, it was looking at me lustfully." Charcoal. F***K. How dare you slander me? On the other end of the line, the woman fell silent again. After an enigmatic silence, she spoke again. "I think there really is something wrong with your brain. Are you out of it? Why don't we cancel this mission?" "Sis, let me explain." Jiang Luiying was rendered speechless by her sister's words. Before she could continue, the woman on the other end of the line continued. "To be on the safe side, I'll give you half an hour to come back." After saying that, before Jiang Luiying could explain further, the woman had directly hung up. The young girl was left dumbfounded as she stared at a teacher's cat. After a brief daze, the girl rolled up her sleeves and pouted at the cats. "You little things, do you think I'm afraid of you?" The girl's strength was unfathomable, and she was no ordinary golden core cultivator. Wang Ling's eyes were like radar, and with just one glance, he could see through her. This was a rare cultivator with 2 golden cores. There were 2 golden cores in his dantian. Their combined strength was dozens of times stronger than an ordinary expert at the peak of the golden elixir realm. The feeling of oppression from the angry girl was very obvious. Even the slightest fluctuation in her emotions was enough to make Wang Ming's face tremble like a wave. Although Zheng Tan had spiritual intelligence, it was at best a cat at the foundation establishment stage. Just a little pressure from the girl's emotions was enough to make its black fur instantly stand on end. Right after that, the cats of the division behind it all stood up like hedgehogs. Suddenly, a bald head popped out of the crowd and shouted, "Commander, watch out!" The monk, the commander of Battalion 1, pounced on Zheng Tan and threw it to the side. The cats of the guard company behind it also pounced on Zheng Tan and pinned it under their bodies. To be honest, Zheng Tan was very touched. After all, this was to protect itself, but when more than 10 cats suddenly pounced on it and pinned it under their bodies, it almost suffocated to death. "What are you doing?" Zheng Tan peeked its black head out from the pile of cats with deep resentment. "Protect the boss, watch out for her chest," the cats said in unison. The monk nodded. "This woman's chest is the size of a normal human woman's. So I seriously suspect that it contains a weapon of mass destruction." Zheng Tan, Wang Ling, even Wang Ming sucked in a cold breath. On one hand, he had been frightened by this bunch of cats talking in human language, and on the other hand, he was astonished by the level at which they spoke. As the strongest brain in Huaxiao Nation, Wang Ming had a basic understanding of these cats' IQs. The black cat in the lead was definitely the highest, followed by the bald cat next to it. As far as animals were concerned, Wang Ming felt that the IQs of these 2 cats might even be higher than those of normal humans. Of course, they definitely wouldn't be higher than him. Wang Ming looked at the girl. "I say, big sister, haven't you noticed yet?" Jiang Luiying had a dazed and puzzled expression on her face. For the first time, Wang Ling and Wang Ming, these 2 sworn brothers, had a tacit understanding that resonated with each other. As the saying went, big breasts and no brains, it now looked like it wasn't without reason. "Big sister, given your realm, you can crush a golden core cultivator to death with one hand. Don't you realize that your oppressive might is completely useless now? This bunch of cats only have spiritual intelligence, but their actual strength isn't that strong, but now, under your oppression, they're still alive and kicking. Realization instantly dawned on the girl, and beads of sweat started to appear on her fair little face. She should have sensed it earlier. Under normal circumstances, this bunch of kittens, including this man who had no spirit energy at all, shouldn't even be able to move under her oppression, but this bunch of cats were actually playing and frolicking in the distance. Taking all these factors into account, the girl could only think of one possibility. That was, there was someone here who was even more heaven-defying than she was. That was why it was possible that her oppressive might had been affected, and that her oppressive might hadn't been able to seep out in the first place. It was like a hole that had burst a dam and was suddenly blocked. Who on earth was it? Jiang Luiying's gaze started to wander quickly between the large group of cats. At the same time, she began to release her spiritual senses frequently, as if trying hard to identify auras among them. At that moment, it seemed that the girl's IQ had finally been recharged, and she started to suspect whether there was something fishy going on between these cats. For example, there was an expert who had used shape-shifting or illusion spells to blend in with these cats. If that was really the case, it could sometimes be identified by carefully distinguishing auras. However, this method of identifying auras was only limited to when the gap between the two parties' realms wasn't too big. To be honest, if he had enough time, he could indeed calm down and play with the girl for a while longer. But now wasn't the time for hide-and-seek. There were only 10 minutes left, and the world was going to be King destroyed. And so, under Jiang Luiying's extremely stupefied gaze, she saw a black and white Persian cat amidst this vast crowd of cats. Step by step, it gracefully walked out of the crowd. At the same time, all the nearby cats very consciously made way for it. Was this it? The girl instantly became vigilant. Just as she was about to circulate her spirit energy, she felt a force surge out of this Persian cat and press down on her. Then, she was stunned to find that her spirit energy was actually stuck in her dantian halfway through its circulation. Furthermore, she realized that she had been imprisoned by an oppressive might and couldn't move. F***K. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.